and also the responsibility he is expected to deliver upon from Kenyans.
Atakuwa na heshima yake, atakuwa na mahali pake kama kiongozi wetu ambaye atastaafu kama rais wa Kenya, ili tuweze kuchunga heshima ya taifa na kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya wote wanaungana tukiwa tunaenda mbele.
And the Independent Election Boundaries Commission is today set to hold a consultative meeting with all the contenders affected by the indefinite suspension of election in 5 electoral seats, which were due to be held on August 23rd, which is tomorrow. The candidates include those contesting in the Mombasa and Kakamega gubernatorial election and 4 constituency seats of Pokot South, Kitui Rural, Rongai and Kachiliba. The candidates are those contesting in 2 electoral wards, in Nyaki West in North Imenti constituency and Kwanjenga in Embakasi South. The 2 leading candidates in the Mombasa gubernatorial election, Abdul Somad Nasir of ODM and Hassan Sarai of UDA, confirmed they had been invited to the meeting, which will take place at the Bomas of Kenya. And the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has announced that 5 corruption-related matters will be heard starting today. The first case will be heard at the Anti-Corruption Court and is against outgoing Migori Governor Kotobado and 15 others. The accused are facing charges of abuse of office, conflict of interest and lawful acquisition of public funds and money laundering. The EACC is investigating 73 million shillings paid by the Migori County government to various companies and subsequently wired to Bado's children for payment of school fees in various universities abroad, acquisition of high-end motor vehicles and purchase of a house in Loresho Ridge. And the family of Kenyan nurse who drowned in Canada while live streaming her swimming session on Facebook say they are stranded in flying her body back home. Helen Wendy Nyabuto was reportedly working as a nurse in Toronto. In the video, which has since gone viral, appears to be in high spirits as she swims from one side of the pool to the other. The 24-year-old regularly takes intervals after each circuit to respond to comments and answer questions fielded on her live stream chat. She at one point makes subsequent trips from her side of the pool to the other, but 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the video, she can be seen struggling to stay afloat after she seemingly strayed into the deep end of the pool. I hope that the family gets the help and assistance that they need. And Somalia Health Minister Ali Haji Aden has confirmed the death toll from a devastating 30-hour siege by Al-Shabaab jihadists at a hotel in Somalia's capital Mogadishu has climbed to 21 as anxious citizens awaited news of missing relatives. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
I like listening to you guys. You're the default radio station in my car in the morning. Even the children listen to you guys.
I agree Parliament has failed this country. And I will say it again. We have not done what we should have done.
We know in this country, the Kenya prison sector is one of the most underfunded sector.
The way it is being done and the way we are calling it Huduma number them Msema Kweli is because all records will be there. You know, there are people who are now billionaires with no history as to how they got all these assets.
Yes. Anything that the president does that is not in accord with the constitution is an illegal act. You know, he shouldn't be doing it and he should be sitting here and trying to sort of guise it up.
I totally believe live transmission of results and allowing Kenyans to be able to view all these results. I believe that it will be impossible to steal elections.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Monday morning doesn't look too bad from most of the streets, except for Jogger Road, which started really early and said we're starting this week off with a bang. And that means traffic has really started to pick up as you're getting to that roundabout at the City Stadium and then on towards Landis Road, which already is really a beehive of activity, buzzing with traffic already. We're looking at it starting to build up on the Thika Superhighway. Coming off of Kiambu Road is not too bad, but we'll look at Juja Road, trying to connect then with Outer Ring and then heading out towards Muranga Road. That's already doing the thing. Outer Ring itself doesn't look too bad. coming off Mombasa Road. Not too much in terms of traffic, but we're likely to see that pile up as we get well into Monday. Coming out of Westerns, we're not going to see too much of an issue, at least for now, but we know that it's going to build up later. So let's keep an eye on things and see how Monday pans out to be. Let us know what's going on where you are, folks. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Our aim is to keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
How are you doing? 9 minutes after 6. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We're here. We're ready to start a new week. It's the 22nd day of August. C.T. Muga.
Eric Latif.
Mambo ni mgari?
Mambo iko bambam. Yes, breeding shuka chini kidogo.
Imeshuka?
Sugar is not as cold as it has been in the last week.
It's improving.
It's behaving. Yesterday was excellent. The sun came out early, and it shone. Yes.
Yeah, that's true though. It's true. Ndu.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was fine. Thank you. Thanks to CBC, I learned that parachichi is avocado.
So when we told you here, you didn't believe it?
You didn't tell me nothing.
Yeah?
And nungu nungu is porcupine. It was a really great weekend. I'm telling you, I learned so much. My Swahili vocabulary is significantly
Nungu nungu is who?
Nungu nungu
is
porcupine.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you know this?
No, I didn't.
You see?
Nungu nungu.
I gather you don't say nungu nungu. Do you say nungu nungu?
No, I wouldn't know. But I'm just thinking of a sentence with the word nungu nungu.
I ran into a porcupine in the forest. How would you say that in Kiswahili?
Wacha kunungunungu mimi.
Wacha kupoki mimi.
So kunungunika comes from something to do with porcupine.
Yeah, stop poking yourself.
Nungunungu alikula parachichi. Ama? How do you see it?
Yeah, kujua ni kujua, sio?
We see it the way you see it, man.
How are you, Eric?
I'm fine, thank you.
You had a good weekend?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Good to see you both.
Good to see you. It's good to see you.
Hata both wamefurahi na wewe.
Wako sawa kabisa.
Both wako sawa.
Yes. Okay. What are we going to have as conversations today? Election aftermath, key lessons for the media and other stakeholders. We'll be joined by a communication consultant, Patrick Gadara, at 7 a.m. for that conversation. At 8 o'clock, let's look ahead into what we expect to see in the Supreme Court, the workings of a presidential petition. Waikwa Wanyoike, a constitutional lawyer, will be speaking to us at 8 a.m. virtually from London, the UK, where he'll be telling us, all right, what we expect. We know that he was part of the team that went to the Supreme Court for the second petition in 2017. At 9 o'clock, we continue talking about peace and promoting peaceful coexistence. We are getting into 14 days of some kind of tension, depending on how it goes, you know. So in these 14 days, it's important that we keep talking about peace. It's really important. A commissioner with the NCIC, Sam Corner, will be joining us at 9 a.m. Yes. Tell us about COVID, Ndu.
All right, let's look at the numbers in Kenya right now. Looking at, where did it go? Oh, it's somewhere. All right, let's start with the global numbers. Now, the globe has crossed the 600 million mark with COVID and is very near to, in terms of numbers, I give well over that, with 600,901,669. That's what we're looking at. We're also looking at just under 6.5 million deaths from COVID around the world. If we're looking at what the Ministry of Health...
What about even less than 10%
of deaths? Yes, it is. Just under 10% of the global numbers of COVID have resulted in death. That's what we're looking at. But it's interesting because when you look at then the deaths that have occurred around the world, 90% of global deaths have occurred in 10 countries around the world. So again, they've really borne the brunt of fatalities of COVID. If we're looking then at what is happening in Kenya, 20 new cases from a sample size of 1,462 gives Kenya now a positivity rate of 1.4%. Numbers have been kept under Kisii County with 10 cases, Nairobi with 7, and Kajiado with 3. And again, if we're just looking at the global numbers for Kenya, 338,042, and cumulative fatalities have been 5,673. Well below 2%, actually, what we're looking at there. Okay, forget COVID-19. The next pandemic will be more expensive. This is a story that's covered in the Standard. Health experts have asked the country to invest in stronger health systems and research in public health to curb future pandemics. Amref Health Africa Group CEO Dr. Givinji Gitahi says strong disease surveillance systems and vaccine manufacturers are crucial, considering COVID-19 may not be the last pandemic. He says it's necessary to have proactive action at the local and continental level to save lives, but also to protect the economy and livelihoods. And he says that the next one might be worse than COVID. It looks as though we're getting out of COVID, but we don't know what is lurking in the shadows in terms of what may come out. But the way to be able to deal with an unknown is to have measures already in place. That can we have local and continental manufacturers of vaccines? Can we actually have this plant that has been touted for long, so that if something would happen, we would be ready to face off on it? After all, they say an army doesn't prepare on the day of war. That's what it looks like for COVID today.
All right. So we are live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE, YouTube and Facebook. If you're online, let us know where you're tuned in from. After we take a look at the weather forecast, we will then look at who is online and acknowledge your presence. Good morning. This is the Situation Room on SpiceFM, live from Nairobi, Kenya.
Cloudy conditions at 14 in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 24 today. 25 will be the high in a clear Nakuru, currently at 14. It's 11 and cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 22. And we'll see highs of 23 in a clear Eldoret, currently at 13. It's 22 and cloudy in Mombasa. We'll see highs of 28. And we'll see highs of 28 as well in a mostly clear Malindi this morning. It's mostly cloudy at 18 in Kisumu, highs of 29 and lows of 18. And we'll see highs of 28 as well in a cloudy Kakamega. Looking out into Kampala, it's 18 and clear. Highs of 27, 28, 29, I beg your pardon, will be the high and mostly clear. Dar es Salaam at 19. It's 6 degrees and partly cloudy in Johannesburg this morning. Highs of 19 and lows of 5. And it's 24 and cloudy in Lagos with highs of 29. We'll see lows of 24. It's mostly clear at 23 in Kinshasa. Highs of 29 and lows of 21. Looking out east into Beijing, it's 32 and sunny going into Monday early afternoon. It's cloudy at 18 in Paris with highs of 26, and 24 will be the high in a cloudy London at 16. It's 24 and mostly clear at New York Sunday night. Coming into Monday, we'll see highs of 28 and lows of 23.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 17 minutes after 6. People are online.
94.4.
Quite a number of people online this morning, and already let's just say one big corporate good morning to everybody. Gideon Helly says good morning, and at specifically the Kitinda Bakery, that's where Mujuku wa Timonya. I'm saying it wrong because I can see all the accents and all the So good morning. Bewa Masha is tuning from Machakos this morning, and Matunda is where Kemboy is. One day he says, good morning, brothers and sisters, tuned in from the Supreme Court. You're there already. All right. Runda Marvelous is tuned in. Kwahule Tubik Blow says, good morning. And Ondicho is saying, tuned in from Mwingi. Clemo says he's tuning from Timboroa, and Ochoki is tuning as well. Aman Sogole says, good morning. Arnold says, good morning. You all look fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
Bizarre.
Kenneth Barno says, good morning. He's tuning from Moy University Campus, Keses. And Borabu, Nyamira County is where Edwin Machabe is. Monday it is. Good morning, according to Mwange. And Buchi Kiamtugo says, good morning. Tuning from Nairobi is where Biketi is. From the silver city of Eldoret, Osama Jr. Okay. Peter Antoroge says, good morning. Tuning from Kiambu, waiting for a punching conversation from all of you. Blessed Monday, indeed, to you as well. Many, many more people on this line this morning. Ben says, watching live. Eldad Benson tuning from Arizona, up late Sunday night, getting you from Malava. Kimani says good morning. Many people saying it's Nungu Nungu, not Nungu Nungu. Okay, got it. Suleiman says good morning, tuned in from Mombasa and from Tel Aviv, grasping the trio vibes and intelligent deliberations at Spice FM. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning. Chadwick Bosman from Chad.
Right. When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
When the what has done what?
When the baobab tree has done what? The goats start climbing it. Let me read the proverb. When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
Wow. So they start climbing it after it has fallen.
Yes.
The height of the baobab tree when it was standing tall would not allow the goats to climb it.
Well, the goats may have wanted to climb it. They were just not enabled to. They don't have the capacity. Yes.
So at a lower level, then
Goats
they can
can't climb trees.
Goats can try, though. They do well in climbing mountains.
They really do.
Trees, different matter.
Shrubs, yes.
Most certainly. Okay. Mountains, definitely. Hills, oh, certainly. Trees,
Which part of Chad is this from?
There's this country called Chad. From there, just hold on.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
It's next to Cameroon.
Yes.
Okay. Sasa.
Also next to Libya. Which side do you want?
And Sudan.
It's on the lower side.
So is it on the side next to Libya, the side next to Sudan?
It's in the middle.
Somewhere. It's in the middle of Chad.
It's in the middle, right in the middle.
www.standardmedia.co.ke. Become a member of the online community and get access to all the premium content that's contained therein, including text, video, photos, audio content. All of that is in there. Tell us what's in there Front pages.
Front page of The Nation today. It's in their hands now. The big legal face-off, all eyes shift to the theatre of the Supreme Court today as Raila Odinga files his petition against William Ruto, which he accuses of usurping the will of the majority by stealing this month's election. Raila versus Chebukati is what the Standard calls it. Azimio team believes it has a watertight case to prove election was not free and fair, and that the Supreme Court judges should overturn Chebukati's declaration. That's what's on those two. And what you have, CT?
I have a Business Daily. Story. These guys have not touched anything on the election. Turkey wins 1.6 billion against state in cancelled IT tender.
Wow.
Good grief.
Kenya. Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, then, below that one, another title, Treasury struggles as fuel subsidy hits 71 billion in 6 months. I was trying to look, is it 7 billion? 71 billion.
71 billion in 6 months.
Yeah, so just if you divide 71 by 6,
carry one.
9 point, 10 point something,
yes.
11 point.
Yes, around 10. So, it would be good if we knew how much the Treasury collected every single month from the fuel levy.
Yep.
What are the chances of knowing that, vis-a-vis an elephant walking through this room right now?
I think the elephant might walk in with the tiger first.
Right. Okay.
That is what I think.
It's easier to know how much has been collected than to know how much has been paid out.
Yes. But do they ever tell us, what is the difficulty? What is the difficulty? Because we know what has been paid out. That one, we every so often we're told, but how much has been collected? Are we ever told? So that you have an idea, so that we can do the maths and say, okay, this is what we collected. This is a shortfall. This is Gava has given us this one, but which we didn't have. Or we've collected, this is remaining.
It's easier to know how much has been collected because you know how much has come in. You just start from there. How much has come in, how much has been used locally, then you know how much has been collected. As to how much has been paid out, the government will tell you this, the oil marketers will tell you something different.
Isn't that the abiding story with this particular matter? Because if indeed we are saying that the subsidy has hit that amount, the assumption that it has been paid out, isn't it? Then if it has been paid out, then why is it that the oil marketers keep saying that they haven't quite been paid everything that they owed?
Yeah. Big issue there.
Isn't that so?
Big issue. So the Star?
Yeah, now, the Star has a dramatic title. It's a smoking gun, Raila says, of court battle. Okay? Phase 2, Azimio may seek to block swearing in of MPs and governors. The things we say. His legal team will expose the truth about how IEBC bungled polls. That's the headline of the Star.
Okay.
How do these people know what these guys are going to do? I mean, they are saying it quite definitively, aren't they? You know, they're going to do this, and they're going to do
sourcing the news,
do this, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do this. Next, they're going to tell us how exactly the Supreme Court is going to decide, isn't it?
Okay. It's called sourcing the news. Okay. What do you want to start with, Ndu?
I don't even know, man. All right, so there's quite a lot in terms of who's going to do what. But this is an interesting one that's carried on the front page of the Standard as well. Who walks tightrope on transition? It's carried on page 12 and 13. With the president having taken an active role in the campaigns and elections, Kenyans are watching to see how he will hand over power should the courts endorse his deputies win. So I'll give you a little bit more in terms of detail to that. Why transition could be a big headache for Uhuru and his allies. Oscar Obonyo says he may not have been on the ballot in the August 9th presidential election, but there is no denying the poll partly revolved around President Uhuru Kenyatta. This explains why he's trapped in the transition middle. as he exits office as per constitutional dictates, having served for a maximum of 2 consecutive terms as head of state. Uhuru is walking a political tightrope thanks to his Jubilee Party's election, Waterloo, as at the hands of Deputy President William Ruto, and the loss of his preferred successor Raila Odinga. Even as the Azimiola Umoja one-party candidate petitions the poor outcome announced by the IEBC, IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati, Uhuru is in a big dilemma on how to deal with his friend turned foe Ruto, who is now president-elect. Just how does the outgoing president, for instance, face his deputy, a man whose presidential bid he has openly opposed, and walk through with him in his last handover phase? And while at it, how does he reconcile with the rumours, or rather with the murmurs in the corner of his main ally Raila, who rightly or wrongly may feel betrayed by the turn of events? Equally restless are Uhuru's top government officers, who have largely executed his political agenda over the last 4 years, thereby putting them in direct conflict with the president-elect and his allies. Besides cabinet secretaries like Fred Matiang'i, Peter Munya, Joe Mushero, James Macharia and Cicely Karaoke, who actively drummed up support for Raila's election, Uhuru stares at the possibility of a string of political orphans led by outgoing National Assembly leaders of Majority Amos Kimunya and his party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni. Should the court uphold Ruto's win, seasoned politician Kiraitu Murungi, who is the outgoing Meru governor, his Nyandarua counterpart Francis Kimemia, who also serves as chairman of the Central Region Economic Bloc, and Jubilee's director of elections Kanini Kega, among other lieutenants of Uhuru who lost at the ballot, also leave the outgoing president politically exposed. Shocked or disappointed by the development, most of the politicians who fell by the wayside declined to speak on this. Kimunya and outgoing Nyeri Town MP Gunjiri Wambogo, for instance, did not respond to calls, while Nyeri State loser Kabando said, "I have seen your questions, but please let this one pass." Despite remaining tight-lipped, the pain in politicians allied to Uhuru is palpable. At least this is evident from the sentiments of Kioni, one of the few poll losers who have opened up. And I'll end with that. The target of this poll battle in our region was President Uhuru. And some of us are not just collateral damage, who were punished for supporting Odinga as advised by our party leader.
So, has the president been quiet?
On what? Excuse me.
On this transition matter, as the stories are saying. What are we comparing this with? Okay, so we say that in 2013, Mwai Kibaki invited Uhuru and Ruto to State House, despite the fact that Raila had already indicated that he was going to challenge the win in court. So the difference here is that Uhuru has not invited Ruto to State House.
Or congratulated him in a public manner or anything. He's not said anything about the outcome of the election. He's not said anything about the murmurs that have come. He's said to the United States delegation that they would do everything that they can to ensure that there's a peaceful transition, and that's just about it.
So is this a legal issue?
No, I don't think it's really. It's not a legal issue.
Does the Constitution have anything to say about this
Whether
process?
he must say something or not?
I'm just wondering, what is the laid down procedure for this thing? I mean, the IBC have done their bit. Thereafter, what should the sitting president do?
I don't think there's a set of rules in terms of what he must do or what he or she must do.
There's tradition.
There's tradition which forms practice. And then again, practice forms tradition.
But we're at the point of trying to establish tradition at this point, So we have one exiting president under this constitution who did not send out a statement saying, "I congratulate Uhuru and Ruto." He just met them at State House. Okay? And then there was a public photo. And there's this one who has not said anything.
Or done anything for that.
Or done anything. But we don't even have much to compare with.
This is what I'm saying.
What's the
what
expectation?
Are you comparing with? If you look at the last 10 years, for example, it was him. 5 years after that, it was him. Maybe it's his style.
Let's go back to 2002.
Yeah.
What did we see?
In 2002, we saw the losing candidate openly conceding. So there was no challenge. What happened is that we had a transition. In this constitution, where we know that there is a number of days set for a petition to be filed, a number of days set for a petition to be determined. We've only seen that one, Mwai Kibaki exiting. So we are at a top point of establishing tradition. And I think when you have one and then you have another, it's open for discussion and interpretation.
It's open for new traditions to be set.
Absolutely.
Or to be set in motion.
There's a suggestion that people can make or what they expect to be the case. But look, there's nothing written down in law. There's nothing that you can say, this is the way it has always been. You cannot say that this is what outgoing presidents are supposed to do, or that we've seen that has happened over the last 50 years. Without such, then you can't dictate what should happen in the present. Unfortunately, you can't. So, look, I think there's a lot of hullabaloo being made about it. The time will come when things will happen at the time that they do. So,
It's a good discussion, though.
Absolutely.
So
It's
what is it
necessary
that
to
we
have.
should see? I mean, what should a sitting president acknowledge that the IEBC has done this and the other and say, whatever the process goes on, I am still in charge.
Yeah.
I want to assure security. There will be a smooth transition whenever it happens.
On either side, he said nothing. This is interesting because he has not talked about President-elect. He has not talked about the IEBC process. He has not given his opinion, at least not publicly, about any of this. All he has said publicly is, we will ensure that there is smooth transition from my presidency to the next.
Which I think is good enough. 27 minutes to 7. Let's take this quick break. Take a look at the traffic. We'll look at other newspaper headlines shortly.
All right, traffic built up on Jogger Road, beehive of activity really early this morning, and we're looking at in and outbound traffic as you're heading out. All your little inroads that are trying to come out of Buruburu, then connect with Jogger Road, also doing the thing today. Getting into the city, it's pretty busy, and let's look at the Thika Superhighway, which started, some rumblings of traffic as well early this morning, but we're looking at most of it happening just at that Pangani underpass. We'll see some action coming out of Kiambu County out onto the Thika Superhighway. We're going to pass that Allsops Junction with some traffic as well. It's not looking too bad in other parts of the city though. Coming off Langata Road, that's all right. The nightmare of construction has come to an end, and so that means quicker movement as folks now can use that interchange getting into the city. Right, coming towards Outer Ring, a little bit of traffic. Kangundo, Juja and Manyanja roads all connecting there. We'll see some action this morning. Wits about, folks. It's necessary. Monday morning is going to be busy as things are getting back into the swing of it. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Talk to us there. Let's keep things moving this morning.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Twenty-four to 7.
Mornings
Look at more
done.
headlines. City. You want to tell us about that story of someone who's been awarded 1.7 billion shillings or
refreshing, isn't it? So that at least we feel that there's a Kenyan somewhere who has been awarded. Whether he'll get it is a different matter, but he has been awarded nonetheless. Here goes. Arbitrator Ringira Falls termination of MES contract. 7 Seas has won deal to wire 98 public hospitals. Subhead. Now the story. Get ready.
Okay.
Right. Business and co-founder of the IT firm 7 Seas Technology Limited, Michael Macharia, has won a 1.6 billion award against the government following a cancelled contract to wire 98 state hospitals. The wire thing will come to later. Retired judge, now arbitrator, Aaron Ringira, found state at fault in terminating the 4.7 billion contract that demanded 7 Seas Technologies Limited provide the technology component of the Managed Equipment Services Plan. That's the MES plan. Right. 7 Seas Technology was awarded the contract in October 2017. Part of the deal was the provision of teleradiology, which allows doctors in top hospitals like Kenyatta National Hospital, and I turn the page. Right. To read X-rays, CT scans, MRIs, and other medical images for the treatment of patients in remote facilities. Okay? You are remote, results being read here.
Right.
Real time, right. The tech firm of which Mr. Macharia owns 60% received a termination letter from the Ministry of Health dated November 18th, 2019.
2 years later.
Precisely. Indicating that the contract contained several clauses, including the requirement for a government letter of support, which was not in the original tender documents. So how on earth did they give him the tender to begin with? All right. The minister said that the Kenya tech firm, valued at an estimate of 3.2 billion in 2016, lacked the financial muscle to shepherd the deal, despite the company having sunk more than 11.11 million US dollars, which is the equivalent of 1.32 billion Kenyan shillings. It boosted a unit of Toyota and Dubai-based Braj, which was the largest buyout fund in the Middle East and North Africa until its collapse, goodness gracious me, in 2018 as its shareholders. Company had shareholders,
Abraj came, put in money, Abraj collapsed.
Yes, Kapsa. 7 Seas Technologies Limited protested the cancellation, insisting the state declined to offer a letter of support, a security document that gives banks the comfort to lend project money to firms or individuals, which is customary in a majority of state projects. It is true. That is also true. However, the tech firm says the letter of support, H, made it difficult to secure a loan from KCB Group, triggering the 2-year legal suit that underlined the tortuous journey of entrepreneurs working on state projects. And I am quoting here, and I have found that the second respondent, Ministry of Health, was in breach of both payment obligations under the contract and the obligation to provide a government letter of support. Both defaults are material breaches of the second respondent's contractual obligation, ruled Mr. Ringira.
So, 2017, they're given the contract. They're told, go ahead.
Yes.
Link up, how many facilities?
98.
98 hospitals to one another. So, they are all interconnected.
And it is many.
That's many. 2 years later, a new health CS, because that's a new health CS, and the second term of Uhuru comes in and says,
sorry,
boss, you don't have a letter of I don't know what.
Yes.
So for that reason, we terminate this contract.
Yes.
And how about all the work that I've done so far?
We have terminated your contract.
No, it doesn't work like that, sorry, please.
Hey,
what?
But I've done the work. We have terminated
your contract. Did you have a letter?
Where's the letter of support? In the absence of, but I have a contract, for heaven's sake. That's why I've been doing this thing. Yes, we understand, but where's your letter of support? Okay, I was not given the letter.
And that's why we are terminating the contract.
And that's, okay.
I'm going to court.
So now they opted for arbitration.
I suspect that the contract included arbitration in its clause. That's how some of these things are actually crafted. so that in the absence of a disagreement, instead of a lengthy process or a court process,
Go
you
for
go to an
arbitrator.
arbitrator. Yes.
What? Okay. Problem is, it's government. Is the government going to challenge the finding of the arbitrator in the High Court?
The government will have to go to court. Because that's the only way you can
Another
tell.
long process, and you've already done some work, and you have
It is.
cash sunk in 1.3 billion.
Yes. And usually with such projects, it isn't as though it was money you kept in a drawer. It's money you've borrowed.
And then surrounding all these issues is the entire scandal around the MES. So you're in that same cesspool.
Yes, you are.
This is the MES thing. I am not touching it.
No, I'm not
MES,
touching it.
I'm not touching. Huh? So,
Yep.
Hey.
Tricky. Is this not one of these buyer beware situations where if you have a government contract, beware?
Aki.
Hmm?
Aki.
Yes, beware.
Take a government contract.
Beware.
What?
That's why we have this unique situation in Kenya where we talk about the government owing foreign lenders money, but we never really quite talk about in great detail or in equally great details of the money the government owes local vendors.
Yes.
Yes. Because that is also a serious debt that the government has.
It's a big issue.
Yes.
It's a big issue. So, governors are to be sworn in this week.
Yeah.
Yes. From
Yes.
Thursday this week, governors will be sworn in. Several of them. In fact, the Kisumu government has already put an advertisement in the papers saying, swearing in of Kisumu County Governor-elect and his deputy. It's notified to the general public that pursuant to the Assumption of Office of Governor Act, the swearing-in ceremony of the Kisumu County Governor-elect, His Excellency Professor Peter Nyang'nyong'o, and the Deputy Governor-elect Dr. Matthew Owili shall be held on Thursday, 25th of August, 2022, at the Jomo Kenyatta International Stadium. It's called what? Mambolewa SCK grounds from 10 a.m.
Same thing for Kericho.
Same thing for Kericho. Same thing happening all over the country, right? Yes. Now, the next battle shifts to the county assembly. People who want to be speakers of the county assembly and then the chairpersons of the various influential committees. Two stories here. 14 people eye Taita Taveta speaker post. The incumbent Taita Taveta County Assembly Speaker is in the midst of a political battle to keep his seat in a crowded race. Candidates from the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya and Kenya Kwanza coalitions are vying for Meshak Mwaganga's position, which he has held since 2013. He has done 2 terms. So far, 14 candidates have expressed interest in the lucrative position, which Mwaganga has promised to fight for. Among the potential candidates who have declared their interest in the seat are losers in the recent general election for governor, for county and National Assembly seats. Both ODM and Pamoja African Alliance have 5 MCAs each. Wiper has 4, Jubilee has 2, UDA, Tujibebe, the People's Empowerment Party, and the Communist Party of Kenya each have 1.
Oh, okay.
We have a Communist Party of Kenya.
Yes.
Okay.
Huh?
And
Okay.
there's someone who's been elected on that party ticket.
Yes.
Is this not a good
As
thing?
an MCA in Taita
Love
Taveta
it.
County. Yes.
This is a democracy, is it not?
Azimio is expected to take control of this house with 11 MCAs, while Kenya Kwanza coalition has 8. Now, those who want to be the next speakers are former governors, former governor candidate Onesmus Mwinzi, former senator Stephen Odiaga, former Motate parliamentary candidate Maurice Mbondenyi. Other aspirants are Janet Oben, Elijah Mwandoe, all these people. John Murutu also wants to be speaker. That is one side. Let's go to the other side. Nakuru, lobbying is in high gear for the new county speaker as well. According to sources familiar with the ongoing lobbying, Dr. Noah Chepkoech, Joseph Tarus, Silas Tochim, Hilary Songoyo, Richard Koech, Emily Kiptui, Peter Kibut are among those interested in the seat. Which seat is this? This is not Nakuru only. This is Baringo. Okay. In Baringo County Assembly. Several lawyers are vying for the position of Kericho County Assembly Speaker. Dominic Rono, a lawyer who's running for re-election, currently holds a seat. Davis Sang, Ben Siele, 2 of his colleagues have also entered the race to become the county's 3rd speaker. It's all now the battle for speaker. Remember also in the National Assembly, Azimio has said they want Moses Wetangula to be the speaker.
Try again. Azimio wants Moses
Kenya Kwanza. It's called Kenya Kwanza.
Yes.
Kenya Kwanza want Moses Wetangula to be speaker.
That would have been interesting.
Azimio wanted Kalonzo Musyoka.
Yeah.
Today is Monday.
Yes.
Today's Monday.
Today is Monday.
Those people are just the same.
Very continue.
Azimio Kenya Kwanza. One Kenya
Kwanza party.
Kwanza.
One alliance. Yes.
So it's about Wetangula and Kalonzo Uku on one side.
And then Marende and somebody else for Senate. Marende for
And the power gentleman.
Yeah.
Governor
For
Kingi.
Senate, yeah, Kingi.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
For Senate Speaker.
For Senate Speaker. Well, the battle is Speaker now. It's control of the assembly at that level.
We've seen this before, haven't we?
Well, we always do.
I said, well, this thing of speaker.
Yeah.
I remember the time when one Mr. Marende, eventually emerged as the Speaker of the Assembly. It was a titanic battle. Cliffhanger. A movie.
Who was he up against?
I'm trying to remember. And the votes were actually being, you could actually, this tension was palpable, the sort that you can't actually slice easily.
You could literally see the votes coming in.
Was it Kaparo again?
I think so. I think it was Kaparo. Vote by vote. When I say cliffhanger, it was, and the cliff hanging seemed to hang on,
on the cliff.
On the cliff.
As it usually does in a cliffhanger. Okay.
And then Marende proceeded to provide what many, many writers continue to refer to as Solomonic wisdom in understanding things, because the clarity with which he made his decision was something that was historic.
He had to balance it.
He balanced it beautifully.
And he made sure that he did it
beautifully.
Yeah, very well, very well. Let me give you one more story before I seed the ground. As the dust settles on the general election, Charles Nyamu from Mugamba Shura village is preparing to present his constituents after being elected Mariondoko Ward MCA. The 28-year-old Nyamu, a KU graduate, won the heart of the electorate after conducting his campaign through the support of well-wishers who donated matchboxes, which were branded with his name and portrait.
Okay.
Well-wishers donated matchboxes, which were branded with his name and portrait. My political journey has not been easy since I did not have money, but residents gave me a motorcycle to campaign. I also received banners and posters. To appreciate them, I gave them matchboxes. I distributed 10,000 kibrits. Nyamu garnered 3,398 votes against his closest rival, who garnered 3,387 votes. He's an environmental science graduate. Says he graduated with first-class honors, later worked with Equity before embarking on his political ambition. This is in Embu County, okay? Where a young 28-year-old guy went to campaign. He got support from well-wishers who donated matchboxes. He donated matchboxes which were branded in his name. Alikuwa anapeana tu kibiriti.
Do you know how effective that is?
Kibiriti.
The kibiriti or the branding?
Well, the branding on a kibiriti.
The branded kibiriti.
Okay. It really, think about it. Huh? How often do people use a matchbox in the course of a day? So you will keep seeing him.
True.
That one comes to an end, another one. You exhaust the power of one matchbox, another matchbox with his name.
10,000 of them.
Effective.
Right.
But that region, going on to Meru, there's an interesting wind that is blowing there. We're talking about wind of change, bring in young people. Man, the age bracket is getting younger and younger and younger. And elected.
Yes.
Truth be told.
Yes.
Meaning, this conversation we keep having, which, well, at some level sounds theoretical, about people actually voting for the person they want because that's the person they want, we are seeing it being realized time and again. We have one Mr. Mwirigi, Mheshimiwa, who has now been re-elected again. Well, he's no longer as young as he was, but he was young. And then you have a 21-year-old in that general locality where this wind is blowing. Again, MCA. Now we're coming to Embu. We're seeing the same thing. I think I'm going to take the time and look into more details to find out if other parts of the country have replicated this.
I think so. I think we've seen quite a number of
this wonderful thing that I'm seeing.
Girl.
A majority of MCAs countrywide are usually below 35.
We've seen significantly lower ages this time round. I think that'd be interesting to look at it and see.
It is, but it also tells you that when people talk about a gap in leadership, doesn't exist, because this is how people start their journey into politics.
Yes.
They learn the ropes.
Yes.
By the time 5 years are over, these people are no longer newbies. No. They've figured out the ropes, and they can try for, should we say, bigger, better, higher seats?
Sure.
Well, the bigger, better used to be member of parliament, but now, minus that little incentive called the CDF, how lucrative is it going to be?
Indeed. So not too exciting of a story here. I don't know how many of us saw the horror of the young girl who drowned in a pool in Canada. Helen Wendy and Enoch Magara, inseparable siblings right from nursery school in Kisumu, had their last jovial conversation last Wednesday night. Magara, who had arrived in Toronto in Canada last December, was toying with the idea of going back to school to pursue his dream of becoming a doctor, but was not sure how to go about it. His elder sister was the only one who could talk about it with. Wendy would spend the next few minutes of their conversation encouraging and advising him on the best universities in Toronto which he could go, or which he could join. A few hours later, after Magara had wished his sister a good night and promised to get back to her with a choice of the universities he would join, the nurse's life was cut short as she drowned in a swimming pool just a few kilometers from where they used to stay in Toronto. According to Magara, my heart sunk when I heard the news of her untimely demise. It's not that she drowned in the pool. The more painful part was the way in which she did. In the agonizing days and nights since her death, Magara has become a former shadow of himself. He now faces the daunting task of organizing her funeral together with friends, explaining to his parents what happened on that fateful day, as well as dealing with the reality that his lovely sister is no more. Her boyfriend, Alphonse Nyamwaya, with whom she had a short conversation before she headed into the swimming pool, recalls those last moments. He was preparing for the afternoon shift when she gave him a call, a video call. She said she was heading to the swimming pool to relax after completing her morning shift. She inquired whether he had eaten before they said goodbye to each other. The pool where she drowned was in a private residence, according to him. In the video that shows her drowning, which has since gone viral, Wendy is engaging friends on Facebook before she moves to the deep end of the swimming pool. She then begins to sink and scream several times for help before pin drop silence. But it's not until 3 hours later that the visitors who came to the swimming pool notice her body and stop the live stream. In a conversation seen by The Nation, Wendy shares with a friend about her experiences in Canada. She says, "I will always be here, even if I die this year. I don't know whether you will come and take my body," she said jokingly in one of the videos. Her ambition of going abroad to seek greener pastures started when she completed her high school at Iterio Girls in 2017. She had a strong determination and knew that she had to set the bar high for the rest of her siblings. She's the eldest daughter of a family of 6, and the lamp has been put out, according to her father. She was the one supporting the family by paying school fees for her other siblings.
Oh, yeah.
Very sad story.
How was this thing videoed again?
She was shooting a video of herself going into the pool.
God almighty.
And sharing the video with her friends. And so it was a live stream. So you can imagine.
So essentially she couldn't swim?
Not in the deep end, no.
No, she just couldn't swim.
She couldn't, no.
Well, but it didn't sound like it's the first time she was going to the swimming pool.
No, it didn't at all. Something went wrong.
Yeah.
Something went wrong.
Because, I mean, by the time even she's telling her boyfriend, all right, I've finished my morning shift, I'm going to the swimming pool to relax. It sounds like it's something she's done before. And the confidence with which she just heads to the deep end.
If you see the video, the way in which she did go in was like she knew what she was doing. But look, this is the sad part, that the video went on and on for hours, and
before anybody
noticed, or before anybody came round to be able to help.
So who came round?
So it was the neighbors from the residence that came, and they realized that her body was then floating atop the water. and they came to help thereafter and remove her body from the water. So then somebody then also came in and then was able to take her gadget and stop the live stream thereafter. But the neighbors at that residence also note that it was a private residence where she was swimming.
Yeah.
So there were not many people around at that time. And she had just come off her shift at night. So it was mid-morning.
Hey, it's a very sad one.
It was a sad one. So there's a GoFundMe account that has been set up, and I guess this is what they're all doing, and they're trying to bury her.
So they're raising funds now to bring her body back.
Yes.
Okay. Very sad one.
And this is why they're trying. If they can't raise the funds, she will not be brought back, and they'll have to bury her there.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. Okay. Hiya, City. What story are you looking at?
What story I'm looking at, I am not going to talk about. However, I just thought I would add something to... Remember the story I read about the tech who won 1.6 billion?
Yes.
I do need to mention that what he had wanted as compensation was 3.4 billion.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And he had wanted this to include the profits that he believed he lost as a result of this, of the problems that... But the arbitrator declined to actually grant the 2 billion shillings on top of the 1.6 that he had granted. And the reason is because he says it was not stated in the contract as a remedy for breaches.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Let's end with this story from Somalia. What's happened in Mogadishu over the weekend? Somali authorities yesterday ended a deadly attack in which at least 20 people were killed and many others wounded when gunmen stormed a hotel in the capital. It took Somali forces more than 30 hours to contain the fighters who had stormed Mogadishu's Hyatt Hotel on Friday evening in an assault that started with loud explosions. The siege ended around midnight, according to the police commissioner. Police are yet to give detailed explanation of how the attack unfolded. It remains unclear how many gunmen entered the hotel. Ismail Abdi, the hotel's manager, told the AP that security forces were still working to clear the area yesterday morning. No more gunfire could be heard after 9 a.m. local time. Onlookers gathered outside the gates of the badly damaged hotel yesterday morning, surveying the scene. It was a horrible, horrible one again.
Yeah, it was a bad attack.
Just get in and shoot people indiscriminately. Horrible. Horrible. Keep it here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. We have Patrick Gadara, curator of The Elephant, talking about the key lessons for media and other stakeholders from the general election 2022, how we covered it, how we followed up everything that was happening on the ground, how we also even started tallying with the access that was granted to the results on Forms 34As and Bs. How did we fare? How can we prepare better for the next election? Very good morning. It's 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga is expected to file a petition at the country's apex court, the Supreme Court, seeking to nullify the victory handed to President-elect William Ruto following the August 9th vote. Ruto was declared president-elect, beating Odinga with a margin of less than 2 percentage points after an anxious days-long wait for results. The outcome has been challenged not only by Odinga's camp, but by 4 out of 7 commissioners at the election body that oversaw the vote.
There will be no reconciliation, there will be no peace, there will be no justice until truth is known. And truth is going to be known because we already know it ourselves, and we are going to show it wide and open. Kenyan people spoke loudly.
These as the Kenya Kwanza team has said that they are ready for the petition, insisting that they want the election fair and square and that what remains is a hurdle they'll overcome.
The journey ahead is a very small journey, Your Excellency. The court, Lily, we are ready for the court. I'm sure, Your Excellency, all those other handles and barriers you have dealt with, the last battle will be in court. And I believe God is ahead of us in that battle.
Watu wa Nyandarua wamesema wao walifanya kazi yao na wakafunga file katika kiti ya president. Na wakasema kama kuna mtu anataka kufungua hiyo file, wako tayari kufanya hata zaidi ya hiyo.
Kwa mara ya kwanza wapinzani wetu hawajapanga maandamano, hawajapanga yale mambo mengine mengi, and we want to thank them so that we can begin to grow the democracy of our country in the right direction.
Odinga has now been defeated in all 5 presidential votes he has contested, even though this year he ran with the backing of outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta and the weight of the ruling party behind him. In August 2017, the Supreme Court annulled the election after Odinga rejected Kenyatta's victory. Now, President-elect William Ruto has assured the outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta of his utmost respect despite their political differences. Speaking at a Thanksgiving service at Gathirine PCA Church, Kiambu County, Ruto said his government will revive the stalled projects that failed under the previous government, as he thanked President Kenyatta for his contribution to the nation's growth to progress. The UDA boss further committed to serve the country with integrity, cognizant of the mandate he has been bequeathed by the outgoing government and also the responsibility he is expected to deliver upon from Kenyans.
Atakuwa na heshima yake, atakuwa na mahali pake kama kiongozi wetu ambaye atastaafu kama rais wa Kenya, ili tuweze kuchunga heshima ya taifa na kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya wote wanaungana tukiwa tunaenda mbele.
Now, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority has commended the National Police Service for the professional conduct exhibited during the recently concluded general election. According to the authority chairperson, Anne Makori, the monitoring of police conduct revealed that officers were better organized and prepared for the management of polling security. Makori noted that there was a marked improvement in the way the men and women in uniform went about their responsibilities in the August 9th polls compared to the situation 5 years ago. She said the police largely acted professionally during the polls. She attributed this to the fact that most of the officers were trained and briefed by their commanders prior to deployment to various polling centers. This was further boosted by an improved number of police officers manning polling and tallying centers. The audit, she said, further revealed that standby detachments were also better strengthened during the elections. And the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has announced that 5 corruption-related matters will be heard starting today. The first case that will be heard in the Anti-Corruption Court is against outgoing Migori Governor Kotobadu and 15 others. The accused are facing charges of abuse of office, conflict of interest, and lawful acquisition of public funds and money laundering. The EACC is investigating 73 million shillings paid by Migori County government to various companies and subsequently wired to Obadu's children for payment of school fees in various universities abroad, acquisition of high-end motor vehicles, and purchase of a house in Loresho Ridge. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
A parking bay is what the Thika Superhighway is being described as this morning, and it's not moving. For many folks who are trying to get into the city today, it's going really slowly, and we're looking at everybody being back to business more or less, and that means Monday morning traffic is crazy. We're looking at it coming in from Kiambu County, and it's getting towards the Pangani underpass. That's what we're looking at in terms of crazy traffic this morning. All right, let's take a look at what's going on within the city. Coming out of Jago Road and then out towards Landis, that's really busy. And has that started really early as well. Coming out of Western's not too bad, at least for now. We'll keep an eye on things. Your bypass is looking pretty good. You want to use those this morning so you don't get stuck in this mess that's happening. Looking at Manyanja connecting with Outer Ring, Juja connecting with Outer Ring, Kangundo connecting with Outer Ring, and all of that is madness. Then the Eastern bypass, again, traffic has built up. Lunga coming in from Jogo and then to Likoni and then towards the interchange on Mombasa Road. It's all what? It's traffic. Welcome to Monday. Let's keep an eye on what's going on. And as we get into traffic hour proper, yes, imagine we're not there yet. Let's talk SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Try as much as possible to keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
7 minutes after
the
7.
only way
Good
to
morning
start-
and welcome to the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, on SpiceFM and online. We have Patrick Gadara in the studio. Before we welcome him, let's hear the day's proverb from CT.
Yes, we're still in the country of Chad. And as per Eric's question early on in the morning, we will be specific. He asked, which part of Chad does it come from? Bang in the middle of Chad. When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
It's like baobab tree, upright. Goats walk around it, no climbing. Baobab tree falls. Goats now can climb.
When the situation befits your circumstance, you take advantage.
Well, yes. This situation has become fairly horizontal, as we can see. So,
take advantage before it becomes vertical again.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to venture an opinion on that.
Surely, when something has fallen, is it vertical?
Well.
Is the subject here the goat or the tree?
Or the position of the tree?
What do you think they're focusing on, Patrick?
Who, the goats?
I think, I suppose if you look at what's in the Bible, a similar thing might be the, I think there's some verse, isn't it in Proverbs, that says that a live dog is better than a dead lion. Something like that. So I think it's probably headed towards there. So the tree can be majestic when it's up.
One time it will fall.
When it falls.
But even goats.
Goats who scrummage everywhere would climb onto it.
I feel that the focus is actually on the baobab tree and what happens to it.
Once was great standing, it's all its majesty.
Yeah. Yeah. Patrick Gadara, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you again on the show.
It's good to be here.
Yes, after the election. Has your ink dried off or has it peeled off or has it... You still have the ink?
I didn't vote, so...
Opening statements.
Patrick.
I've been always open. I didn't bother too much.
Why?
Well, my reason is basically that I think there is too much emphasis that we put on elections. I think that what really matters is what happens in the years in between elections and not really the election itself. The election is just a device for appointing politicians to power. It benefits politicians. It's not really an exercise for us. And I think it's more what we do to hold these people we elect to account in the 5 years that are there. That's more important. That's not to say voting is bad. Whoever wants to vote, I always say, fine, go ahead, do it. But I think we've put so much emphasis on sort of exercising your democratic right on election day that to some extent I feel like we we kind of de-emphasize the real work of democracy, which is in between elections.
Holding them to account.
Explain that a little bit more, the in between.
Well, when you, whoever it is that you elect to power, the expectation that there'll be what quote unquote good leaders or they'll deliver their promises. I think our history shows that that's not the case. You can't rely on it. You've got to push them to do it. You've got to stop them actually going contrary to the agreements that we have in our constitution, our expectations that we have for them. We always see every time we put people in, they very quickly start trying to roll back our freedoms, our opportunities, etc. And the way I think of democracy is not so much as a system for electing rulers or for appointing rulers. It's a system for people ruling themselves, so people participating in their everyday decision making. And I think that's what we need to be pushing for. Where the things that matter to you, you don't wait for them to be delivered by a politician. It's actually you take up a stand and you go out and you push them to actually do it.
So do I hear you to be saying that instead of the slew of promises that politicians make every electoral cycle, the sort of leader that perhaps one ought to look for is the sort of leader who campaigns by seeking to strengthen the power of the voter?
I would say I don't look for leaders. I don't think we should be looking for leaders.
What should we do?
These people are people we give jobs. So their jobs are to represent. Their jobs are to articulate policies, essentially do what we have hired them to do.
But
I don't think for me that is
leadership.
No, I don't think
but
so.
Is representation not leadership?
Not really. An
What
MP is just an MP. It's just if I asked you go represent me in some forum, I'm not asking you to lead me. In fact, it's the other way around. You should follow my lead.
You've determined to demean my position this morning.
No, not really.
I see you. I see you. But your point is well made. But again, so that we don't dwell on semantics,
right?
In all honesty, even if we appoint, we collectively decide, have we then not surrendered, if only in small part, some of the things that constitute our rights to this person to represent us?
No, we don't surrender anything to them. These people are there to do our bidding.
Really?
That's what we hire them to do. They're there to do our bidding. And that's my point. In fact, to go back to the whole issue of elections, is we hire them to do a job. The act of hiring, for me, is not as important as whether the jobs actually get done in the 5 years and how we can hold them to account to it. And then more importantly, we are not giving up our rights,
our sovereignty,
to make decisions, to be consulted, on the things that that matter to us, and I think that's where our focus really should be.
If I stick on that point, Gathara, if you're saying that the act of selecting this individual who will do this job is not as important as holding them accountable. Right?
Yes, as pushing them and participating in the process.
Right, in what you're saying. So then where is the importance of the who? Of the who does the job? Because, you could pick anybody then to just do it. And then, because what you're saying is then that you can now push a person, you can mold a person into getting them to do the right thing. So from what you're saying is that it doesn't matter who gets into the position, doesn't matter who that individual is. It can be anybody. So long as then now you do this important activity of between the selection periods, molding and pushing and holding this person accountable into what they must do.
I think it's not immaterial, but it is not the most important consideration. If you look at how democracy was run, actually, by the Greeks before, they had a system called sortition, which was basically a casting of lots, over who would rule, and the idea, I think, behind that is that if we are saying people can rule themselves, then whoever it is you put in there should be able to, you should be able to mold him, as you say, to do your bidding. You see, it's not, for me, it's not about electing a ruler. That's not what I think democracy is about. And another thing is, when we focus on the who, yes, if you get a guy who doesn't want to oppress you, to take away your freedoms, then you probably have an easier time. But the fact is, you're not always going to get that guy. A corollary to that you can think of is this argument guys have always had that all we need is benevolent dictators. And you get a benevolent guy, you're fine, you're good. But if you don't get a benevolent one, you are in real problems. And so for me, it's actually much better to focus on how you are able to hold people who have power to account, rather than to be too sort of focused on who they are. There's an American chappie called Wendell Phillips who said that the people who are elected to power are the necessary enemies of the people. That just the fact that they wield power, they become the people that then you've got to fight. So it doesn't matter whether he was a nice guy before. Once he's in there, as we have seen actually in our own experience in Kenya, all these good guys we keep voting in and then they turn out to be monsters.
But this narrative of leadership, it's something that we ourselves seem to talk about, and we seem to forward it endlessly. So does it therefore mean that when one is chosen from among us, what they then go and do is portray what it is that we actually expect?
No. First, they really do what we expect and what we want, which is then why we need to hold them to account. And secondly, if you look at elections, and this is across the world, not just in Kenya, they rarely produce people who are quote-unquote representative. MPs tend to be in the main tend to be wealthier, better educated than the populations that they are said to represent. Many times when you and you can look at this, as I said, across the world, it's the same. They very rarely look like the guys who they say they are going to represent. And so when you say that when they are acting there, they are acting in the same way as I would, etc., I would question whether that's actually true.
What I'm actually saying is, consider why it is those who elect them choose them.
Well, for a variety of reasons.
Yes, but that's
not necessarily meaning that those people, if you elect an MP like Babu, who's known for shooting DJs in nightclubs, I don't think the idea is that
Gadara, I thought there was one incident of one DJ who was shot.
Well, by him.
Yes, but when you say shooting DJs, it's like his pastime. He goes from nightclub to nightclub looking for DJs to shoot.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the fact that he goes and shoots a DJ in a nightclub,
yes,
how is that something that that you can say that it represents what people of Embakasi want?
Okay.
Of course not.
So in 5 years'
this guy
time,
goes,
is this the one thing
thing
that would say?
No, my point is, he goes
can't
there.
Be one incident that then people would use to say it represents them.
I'm using it as an illustration to simply say that the idea that people in power, when they act, that they are always acting in ways that represent us is not true, And that's what I'm disputing. And I'm saying that many times, in fact, I would say the majority of times, when these guys go into power, they start acting in ways that benefit them, not us, And that is why then we've got to be quite clear that it's not just about, it's not a fire and forget sort of thing that, we put you in power, then we'll see you after 5 years. The actual job is in between those 5 years. And that's
so your focus is on the accountability.
On the accountability
and
participation.
I put it to you, Gadara, that accountability starts at the very beginning. Accountability starts with vetting the candidate. Accountability would start from that point, from looking at the person who's presenting themselves as a leader, accounting them, holding them accountable for their past deeds, looking at their character, judging whether they have the capacity to represent you properly, and then giving them the mandate and then holding them accountable for the next 5 years.
And I would disagree. I mean, that's fine. What I'm saying is that aspect of holding of selection is less, to me, is less important than what actually you do in the years that they actually wield power.
Okay.
You know, because what they'll tell you before you they get into power, they can have track records, they can have, you know, all the things that you will use as measures. But once they start wielding power, lots of that goes away. You know, I mean, think about 2002. You know, we had people who had been detained by Moi. You know, think of people like what's the was it Meru governor?
Kiraitu.
Yeah, Kiraitu Murungi. These are people who had bloody track records. You know, and then 2 years after he's in, he's telling us go through on investigations. You know, the very people who exiled John Githongo were the people he had been in trenches with. You know, Martha Karua, when she was declaring Edward Clay persona non grata, you know, these are people with records. So if you say that all that matters is this vetting thing that we do, you know, once they're in power, all those bets are off.
So
You know?
are we saying, therefore, that what we have on the pedestal and what we are now judging is the effects that power has on people?
Yes, the effect actually that the system that we have has on people and what it is actually designed to do. In a very large way, to a very large extent, what we inherited at independence, and again, this is not about blaming colonials, it's just understand my argument. What we inherited at independence was a system for stealing. The whites did not come here to be our friends, to develop us, or whatever. They came to steal our stuff, you know. And they created a system for it. They created a government to enable them to do it. And we inherited that system. And we failed or refused to reform it. The people who got it kept it intact. In fact, what's his name? Kisumu wrote a very interesting paper in 1982, you know, where he basically argued that we tried to impose at independence a liberal constitution on an authoritarian colonial structure. And what happened was the structure didn't change. It was the constitution that changed. That system remains still today. We are trying to impose a new constitution from 2010 on it. You know, and already we can hear with BBI, etc., people are trying to change the constitution, not the system. You know, so I think we have to be aware that what we are doing is we are taking our very bright people in our elections, very good people, and feeding them into a rotten system. And that system is designed to corrupt them, you know, and that's all we keep. That's why we keep ending up with, you know, rotten fruit.
You know, if we go down history, there was a charter that the then Queen of England gave a certain company called Imperial British East Africa Company. Okay? Now, before we knew of any government or anything, those are the people who first came here, ostensibly to do business, but in reality to extract.
Yes.
Okay? Now, this territory, I mean, this Imperial, this thing is wonderful. Somebody, God knows, 8,000 kilometers away, decides.
Yeah, I mean, think about...
Go there.
Our police comes from IBA.
Yes.
You know, they are the guys who set it up.
Yes.
They weren't setting it up for us. You know, and unless we actually come to that realization and then we start saying, all right, we want to change. When we passed the 2010 Constitution, you know, I think for me that was really the first time that we were thinking about what sort of system do we want that works for us. You know, now unfortunately we don't internalize the sorts of institutions and ways of doing things that the Constitution requires or that it wants. It's a vision.
Or what is envisioned?
So I'll give you an example with the police. We have an article, 245, that says the president cannot, or nobody can tell the police who to go and arrest. You know, that they're operationally independent of the executive.
Really?
You know, Article 245, check it out. You know, But every day you see Kenyatta stand up and say, "Oh, I ordered those guys of Kemsa to be arrested." Or Matiang'i will say something like so. This is us when we don't then speak up of that, when we don't tell him, "You sit down, shut up, that is not your job." We abandon that constitution, we abandon that vision.
Okay.
The
real challenge
I think we hadn't even bought into the vision ourselves when we were writing this constitution. Because no sooner had we given all this work to the Githongos and the others to come up, no, it wasn't Githong, it was Hassan Omar and the others to, put together a police service commission, independently recruit an inspector general of police, let them now operate independently. Then we turn back on our own political leaders and ask them,
how far?
Yeah, surely we are being attacked at Westgate and you, our president, can't say anything. You, the interior minister, cannot tell us anything about what's happening. Who's coordinating this? Who's running this? Who's to blame for the mishandling of all these security operations? We went back to the leaders and said, we want you to be answerable to us because we elected you to run a government and provide a security. Which gives justification for the amendments to those security laws.
Well, I don't think it gave justification for it, and I would agree with you to the extent that the design of the Constitution was something that people have actually internalized and understood. We still see it from the prism of the past. And I think to a large extent, even the contestations we have around the presidency, today, although it's supposed to be a really sort of diminished office in the Constitution, reflects that we are bringing attitudes to it, that are born of our history, of what we've experienced the presidency to be, I think when it comes to...
Is it just the experience or the expectation?
I think it's the experience. It takes a while. I mean, constitutions don't implement themselves. It takes a while for people to recognize, what it is. I mean, look at our judiciary. It's been on a journey since 2010. Learning to assert itself. What are the things it can do? And 2017, for example, was a culmination. If you look back at how laws had been struck down, things that never used to happen prior to 2010, So our judges have been learning. The population is also learning. And I think part of the job that we have, even within media, is to keep highlighting to people, what it is this vision is and where it is that our politicians, our rulers, go wrong when they, when they go against it, And I think when we keep quiet about it, then people don't get the opportunity to learn, to internalize. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be a while. And I recognize that, but I still think that it is something that we need to keep pushing on. And to keep educating, the population about what the expectation is when it comes to, how people in particular offices should act. What are their powers? What are they, what are they not allowed to do? And pointing it out whenever they go contrary to that.
7:20. Patrick Adara is the curator of The Elephant. He's here with us in the studio. He's one of the 7.9 million who did not vote in this general election. We've talked about them. We have one of them, specimen, in the studio to tell us why. Also looking at the lessons that can be taken by the media and other stakeholders from this election, how it was covered, how it was managed, how communication came from the IEBC, from the polling stations, from the tallying centers, from the electoral observers across the board. What lessons do we take from this? Let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly.
Tengisa kidole. Tengisa kidole, agano kidole, agano kidole, agano.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Looking at partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning, we'll see highs of 24 and lows of 12. It's sunny at 14 in Nakuru, highs of 25 and lows of 13, and 11 will be the low in a cloudy Nyeri at 14, going to highs of 22. 23 will be the high in a sunny Eldoret at 13, and it's 21 and partly sunny in Mombasa, going to highs of 28. We'll see highs of 28 as well in a mostly sunny Malindi at 25. It's 18 and cloudy in Kisumu, highs of 29, and we'll see highs of 28 in a cloudy Kakamega, currently at 15. Looking out into Kampala, it's raining this morning at 20, highs of 27, and it's a sunny day at 19 in Dar es Salaam, going to highs of 29. 5 degrees and partly cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 19 and lows of 4, and it's cloudy at 24 in Lagos. We'll see highs of 29. And into Kinshasa, 29 will be the high as well. It's currently partly cloudy at 24. All right, seeing the build-up of traffic in many parts of the city. Out of Ring there now is your latest victim. And we'll have traffic really heavy as you're trying to get out towards the thicker superhighway. And then we're looking at incoming traffic on Savannah, Manyanja, and then going up north towards Kangunda Road, and then as well as Juja Road this morning. That's an absolute mess. Everybody's trying to get onto the thicker superhighway, the back route, but you're going to get onto the thicker superhighway, and quite some traffic coming in from Kiambu County. Really heavy on Kiambu Road. In and outbound traffic is doing that thing this morning. We're looking at the exits on the expressway, especially around Westlands, have clogged up some, and there's action there. It's a beehive of activity wherever you look this morning. All right, coming in from Muranga Road, then into the CBD, pretty busy, and into the CBD is where you see most of it today. So Monday morning has started off with a bang. Hopefully you're safe where you are. Let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods. Talk to us on SpiceFM, KE on Twitter.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
26 minutes to 8.
FM,
Patrick Adara is still
Nairobi.
here with us. He's a curator of The Elephant. We're talking about the election, the aftermath, the lessons the media and other stakeholders could learn out of this. Ndu, you had a question for Patrick.
Right, so I mean, even as we're looking at this, Patrick, and saying then coming off of yet another election, which, you know, unfortunately has, and probably even before that, you had a polarized country when it was, you know, making certain decisions. What would you say, coming to the point that you were making just before you went to break, and saying, look, we have to keep these conversations alive. Otherwise, we get to a point where maybe you have an almost reticent electorate, whereby just, okay, well, let's just kind of go along with things because we don't want a situation whereby, you know, things are going to get messy, so let's just take things as they come, right? How do you keep these conversations alive in the midst of what we are currently in? We've got, you know, one side of the divide going to the Supreme Court today. We've got another side of the divide saying, well, you know what, we want and we're going ahead. We've got the majority of the electorate today who've not made a decision, who've decided, and I'm saying of those registered to vote, they made the decision to register to vote, but they did not. And that's the majority number that we're looking at today if we're going to go by the numbers that we've been given, right? The majority of those registered to vote did not make a decision.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true. I mean,
you have more numbers.
If you have 14 million who voted out of 22,
you have more numbers, people who did not vote, than the one who said that for the ones that we has won the election.
Yes, I mean...
Okay? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, clearly.
So now, how do we keep that conversation alive of the things that you're talking about today? How do we keep the conversation alive and say, look, folks, essentially be woke about some of the things that are necessary to keep a developing economy going, to keep a developing leadership and governance and transparency and accountability? How do you keep that going in the midst of some of the things that we're seeing that's come off from August 9th?
Well, I think the first thing is simply to educate the population about what's going on. I think one of the things that was really highlighted by this election is that lots of guys did not understand what's this process that we have. And I think it's very good that we got all these forms up, etc., that we had a bit of transparency that guys could actually see this is how it works, that you could have debates about 34Cs and 34B and 34A, and what leads to what, And I was quite enthused by that. I thought that was people starting to sort of internalize, how does the system actually work? Because if they are to participate in it, then they really should know. I don't think it's a problem having somebody challenging a result in court.
Sure.
We've
Maybe
had
even
it.
encouraged.
Yeah. In fact, we've had it the last 3 election cycles. I mean, the last 2 and now this one. So it's not anything new. And I love it that lots of times this is actually broadcast. It's live. You're watching. You're hearing the arguments. Now, unfortunately, because it's a courtroom, a lot of it is legalese, and I would hope that rather than simply repeat the sort of the legal language that's in the courtroom, that the media this time will actually try and explain, this is what the allegation actually is in everyday language. This is what these guys are saying. I like that it is challenged. I think there's 2 outcomes, obviously, that we will get. Either it's upheld or it's nullified. I think if it is upheld, it's going to be a really good... it's going to set a standard, in essence, for this country, and I think probably for the region. That elections going forward, there's an element of transparency we are going to expect of the IEBC. In the same way, 2017 nullification set a standard. There's certain shenanigans that basically, even the IEBC knows if you do them, they're going to go. So this time you're not hearing talks of servers and and all of that. And I know with the court cases yet to come, But I think there has been some deterrent already from the 2017 election, that say there's a standard below which we cannot go. I think if this is upheld, it's going to lay out a standard of transparency that will make sure that we don't have the sorts of shenanigans we're used to at election time. The other thing is, if it is nullified, given that the IEBC had sort of made this big deal of transparency, my fear is that if it is nullified, then people will sort of say that, what's the point of all this transparency?
Of all the transparency.
And so it's really important that we start explaining what are the issues that are at stake and why that transparency, even if this is nullified, why it will still be important to insist on it in future elections.
It's interesting that you say that, because last week CT was of the opinion, I think he's still of the opinion, not just last week, but even now, that all this legalese and all of this language needs to be broken down for everybody to understand exactly what is going on, because then moving forward, you will then be able, even if you're not using it to make an informed decision, you then have a psychological situation whereby you are aware of exactly what is going on, the questions that are being asked on a regular basis. All right, so then what does this mean? And does the chairperson actually have the right to make a decision on his own? Or are we talking about declaration? Oh my God, what's the difference between a declaration and a decision? Or what is corporate consensus? What are we talking about here? A repetition of consonants. It just seems like that's what we're dealing with. But breaking it down then gives everybody the opportunity to be in the same playing field, so we get it.
Yeah, and I think what it can do is it can allow us to build consensus about the sort of system we want, and that system is not sort of, the lawyers will come and define it sort of in the same way you can get an architect to sort of draw you a house, but in general you should know what you want, and I think
for us, it's about understanding the system that we have. Does it actually suit to serve our needs? And that comes from, I think, us understanding what that system is.
You know what the lawyers do, though, is good for us in that, depending on which side of the divide they represent, again, it is an opportunity for us to understand the vagaries of the law, issues surrounding it, positions that people take. It's an educative system.
Yeah.
But in that same vein, if you look at the electoral processes that this country has had and the corruption therein, we also see the evolving nature of that corruption and how sophisticated it comes with every election. So that where previously there was suggestions and innuendos of ballot stuffing, where, well, use your imagination, votes, ballot box, stuffed, okay? Right. Then we even had a system that we refer to as mlolongo, where people form queues. I mean, this is the evolutionary process of our electoral system, where the district commissioner was a returning officer and he was a government. I mean, all these things. Even when we get to a system now where we're talking about an electronic system, therein, so long as there are human beings involved, their intentions will always be manifest in one way or the other within that system. Right. It's still part of the evolutionary process. However, the thing that politicians need, well, they won't do it, but they seem to want to convince us, is that at some point one side is actually better than the other. And that one side is devoid of what they're accusing the other of.
I mean, we know this is not true. Lots of these guys are just switch positions. Yep. They've all each been accused of pretty much the same thing. I think that for me, it's if we understand the system and if we make the system more transparent, so people can actually see how it works. People can understand what are the various things that they should expect. In the end, we are going to be the people who safeguard it. It's not going to be the lawyers. It's going to be us who sit back and say, this matters to me, so therefore I don't want A, B, C, D happening. It is we can put pressure on the people who hold power so that things work as they're supposed to.
But
unfortunately, let me just finish one thing, especially on like for the IEBC, for example. I think the transparency that we saw after voting day, was sorely lacking before voting day, And I think that there wasn't much sort of effort to explain to people that this is what we are doing. Yeah. This is how we are preparing for. What are the gaps there? What are the issues? So that when we go and participate in this exercise, we know what to expect. I'm hoping that this time we're going to start early. I would rather that we start talking about the electoral system. All the issues that you're going to hear at the Supreme Court in the next 2 weeks are going to include issues that we should have handled, from before, debates
between December and August.
That we shouldn't have waited, till the election is upon us to start talking about what register we're using.
But excuse me, we didn't actually wait. Issues to do with the conduct of IEBC and how they go about their business, they have been in the public domain. The debates have been there. Questions have been asked. The only thing is IEBC doesn't respond when you ask questions. We ourselves have asked many questions, but this doesn't seem to be this way. Can this be explained?
Actually, if you look at what so for example, we went into this election essentially with the same set of rules that we went with in 2017 that had resulted in the problems we had 2017. Lots of the things that I'm hearing now that if you assume the reporting is accurate, that are going to be raised at the Supreme Court are going to be things that were raised before there, So we haven't actually fixed much, and my point, and that's my point, is that we, and there's sort of a culture of doing this. If you look all the way back to 92, 97, we always had this idea of minimum reforms to just get to the elections. And after the elections, we don't actually go and do the comprehensive bit.
We don't.
We sit back, we wait till the next election is upon us, and then we start talking about registers and rules and procurement and all of this.
Because the political class is not interested
the political
in
class
proper
is not
reforms.
interested in a free and fair election. They're interested in an election they can manipulate. That's what they want.
Yes,
precisely. Now, if that is the case,
but
then
what I'm saying is, then it is us to defend the system, because
Yeah.
we
Okay.
want a free and fair one.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so it's then us to get involved and to push that in this period.
When you say involved, how then?
So by whether it's pushing your MP, your representative, making clear to him that this is an issue that matters to you, that you want to see within Parliament's calendar. Let's sort this thing out. It's media making that an agenda, not waiting for when the politicians will decide it's important. It's us insisting, no, it's important. It's got to be something that's got to be dealt. It's activists who will go to the streets, or people who will write articles or whatever. We put pressure on them. In the same way, if you remember the whole in the 90s when we had the whole talk of reform, this wasn't something that just came from politicians.
Sure.
We pushed for it. So we have various ways. Elections are just one way of participating. We have very many other ways that we can participate and push our representative to actually do our bidding. And that's why I would hope that in the 5 years in between, that's where our focus is.
When we talk of transparency, I am of this mind. Are we talking about a transparency that actually was, or the appearance of it?
Well, we'll see when the court case comes, whether what we were shown was basically tulifumbo macho, or it was a real transparency. That's going to be tested at the Supreme Court.
Because the narrative of transparency, if you ask me, is what dominated the airwaves. I mean,
yes,
it's transparent, it's transparent, it's transparent.
You can say, it as much as you want.
But there were elements of transparency. There were
but that's
elements
going to
of
be tested now.
Exactly.
That's the thing. That's
degree
going to be the value
Yes.
of the court case. It's going to test that that presumption that there was transparency. And I'm really hoping that it upholds that there was transparency.
Sure.
Because then that, as I said before, is going to set a standard. For everything else. But I think we also have to think about when we saw the transparency. That was just after voting day. Why didn't we have transparency before?
Okay.
Like we should have had a clear calendar. Everybody should have known.
Right.
We expect the first batch of ballot boxes to arrive on a certain date, weeks in advance.
Right.
Second batch comes here, and then this is what will happen if we are going to use that manual register or not.
Yeah.
If the
all
KIMS
those
kits are
rules
there
should be
or not.
agreed on way before we get to polling day.
Yeah.
Right.
But in this case, we even had the courts changing rules.
24
days.
hours before.
Yeah, to a day to the election. Which is not helpful at all.
Yeah.
So I think again, we start early, we push early, so that those things are agreed by the time we get to the next one.
So now this maybe then comes full circle what you were saying as that it is what happens in between the selection is what is more important than the day, because really what are we looking at? Months. We're just looking at months between when these new individuals or even the same individuals are chosen again during an election process. But then what you said also, I think I'd like to stick on for a moment, is that then is it then not possible that it is just going to be a few who will carry a reform agenda? It is not possible to have an entire nation's population carry this reform agenda, to carry on these activities. You may have it over time, but initially, I mean, we saw a time where civil society was vibrant and robust in carrying, but it was not all of civil society, it was not the entire population. You will have sections, even the media that we talk about, that is absolutely necessary to have to make the issue an agenda. It's interesting that you said that. To make these issues, make it the agenda. It is actually not possible to have the entire population walking in one direction at the same time at once. So then what are we saying? That it is necessary to have folks who will stand up and say, look, this we need to make it agenda and then get people to latch onto it later, because you'll have people, Patrick, who unfortunately are not plugged in at that time. They could be later, but you will not be able to have everybody plugged in to the same agenda at the same time.
No, I agree. And this brings me to another point about this sort of focus we have on elections. We've denuded the spaces that are outside the state the centers of power that are outside the state that can then do these sorts of mobilization.
Yeah.
If you think of 2002, for example, we basically decapitated civil society and put them all in government, and then we had a period where civil society
join us so we can weaken you.
Yeah, and you can see this sort of trend that when people are effective in spaces that are outside government, we very quickly try and co-opt them into government. So Wangari Maathai, very good as an environmental activist, Nobel Prize winner, etc. We push her into government. Where she starts defending the corruption in Kibaki's government. We don't keep them. Boniface Mwangi, very good as an activist, we just become an MP. He had the Standard. You had Mohaji Chopevu. Fantastic as a.
Do you know what you're actually saying? You're saying that all these activists are rent seekers, that they take a position to oppose the government because it's the thing to do, and then when people give them the task that they've been garnering for, say, okay, you've said you're a champion, yeah, okay, now get in there and champion for us. Yeah. And then they change. So essentially you're saying whatever position they took was to get them...
was a means to an
end. Yes, exactly.
I have to say this. I'm not saying that what they were doing was disingenuous. My point is they were effective where they were, and that we have to understand this system, that where you've got many different, checks and institutions, and these institutions are not all inside the state, they're not all in parliament. That it is very valuable to have a powerful, strong media. It's very important to have a vibrant civil society.
Sure.
And that when you have a guy from civil society who then stands up and says, I'm really effective at that, let me get into parliament, you should think, what is my interest as a Kenyan, as a citizen? I know he wants to be in parliament. I know he'd like maybe the salary of parliament, and he thinks he can make a difference there. But perhaps it is better for me, for that guy to stay out there. And that's what I would prefer. This thing that when we feed our best and brightest always into government, and we have seen the results that we get when we do that.
But does it not speak more of the character of these individuals? Because the same argument has been forwarded.
I think it speaks to the system. When you've got
they're swallowed up by the system.
When you've got basically like a uniform outcome, it keeps happening. Then at some point you will say, it's not the people that we are putting in that are all uniformly bad actors, but there's something about the system that we have that corrupts them.
There's something about our people that makes them susceptible to corruption.
Because you can't say no, can't you?
Yes, I mean, can someone stand up and just say no? Sure.
You can imbibe the same things that you say.
Again, this expectation, and I find it a bit strange. This expectation that people will just say no, that's all they need to do, kind of ignores how we work as human beings. We respond to incentives.
We respond to stimuli.
Yeah, I mean, you give them, you give people gaps. So if, for example, today you say there are no cops in the streets, nobody is going to be arrested for committing crimes. What do you think will happen? So you've got to, we know this. This is how people work. So my thing is, since we know if we put them in there, this is what we are going to get.
Citizens or the police service?
Well, the police service probably. But citizens, if they don't have the deterrent of what happens...
You know this argument, what I like about it...
when you commit a crime,
I've heard
I think you're going to find many more crimes are committed.
So Patrick, if we're to go with your argument, then we should say that Raila Odinga should stop trying to be president and just remain in the opposition. Because that's the role he plays.
Again, if we think that he's more useful to us...
of you as a Kenyan?
If we think our best interest is for him to stay there, keep him there. That's my thing. He can run if he wants to, but I wouldn't vote for him. To say, all right, you become. Because if I think it's in my interest for him to stay outside. If we want a strong civil society, stop electing civil society activists into parliament. Keep them within civil society. In fact, make it more lucrative for them to stay there.
In the civil society.
because that's where you need them, that's where you want them. When we keep feeding guys into the state, we just keep creating monsters, and that's what we've been doing for nearly 60 years. All these guys used to be very nice guys. Many of them, when they came into power, when they used to say nice things, when they fought for our freedoms, But once they get into power, it's a completely different
they get into
kettle
that
of fish.
system, they are no longer as outspoken.
And not just outspoken, they become the very thing they were fighting.
Facilitated.
What reality do they encounter when they get into this thing we keep referring to as the system? What is it that they see that makes them realize that
the belly of the beasts?
A lack of accountability. Suddenly your roads are being cleared for you. Your kids are being taken to nice schools.
You're given a monster
being given
vehicle
escort.
and the driver.
All that, it gives you a real incentive to stay in there.
And forget the uncomfortability that you can
So my rent seeking narrative isn't really far off, is it?
So if we provide them with all of that, then the result for it is going to be obvious. You can more or less anticipate it, And to a large extent, that's why it's there. You remember that guy who walked in Meru in 2017, who went around looking for votes?
Yes.
The first thing Kenyatta did was give him a Prado. You are now one of us, not one of them. And then suddenly, his own constituents, when they went to see him, were being beaten up by bodyguards. So we've got to, these are incentives that we create in the system. That behavior, as it's called Donna Meadows, I think, said a system creates its own behavior. And that's what we are having. We are having a system that is generating this behavior, and we keep feeding people into it, expecting a different outcome.
Why do we speak of this system as though it's devoid of human influence? As though it's like artificial intelligence that has acquired its own properties and its own humaneness or humanness so that it can decide things. By the way, that portion of scripture you quoted was Ecclesiastes.
Oh, okay.
Chapter 9, verse 4.
The one about the lion.
It is better to be a live dog than a dead
lion.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah. I think for me, the way I understand the system is not it's how all these cogs work together to produce an outcome. So that includes the people in there. That includes the rules that you have. That includes the sorts of institutions that the norms, the cultures, etc. All that is part of it. And we've got to be thinking, what's the culture within the state? What do we have there? So we get Okiya Omtata is now a senator. Do we expect that he will
He can be going to court to challenge the work of Parliament.
Or he
instead
will
of representing the county.
Yes.
And not just that, he becomes Mheshimiwa. Suddenly people kowtow to you, all of this, and you get real advantages.
So
you will always, when Moha was saying that he's going to be a strong investigative parliamentarian or whatever, that was always going to be rubbish. It's nothing. Once you're in it, you're one of them.
Rubbish.
Thank you.
You can look at what we got after.
He's back. Patrick Adhara is a curator with The Elephant, is an award-winning cartoonist as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you.
Always a pleasure being here.
Keep it here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. Let's see. What is it that we expect to get out of the Supreme Court? What's the process? What are the proceedings that take place in the Supreme Court process of the presidential petition? Waikwa Wanyoike is a constitutional lawyer. He'll be joining us in the next hour. Good morning. It's 8 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Now, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga is expected to file a petition at the country's Supreme Court seeking to nullify the victory handed to President-elect William Ruto following the August 9 vote Ruto was declared president-elect, beating Odinga with a margin of less than 2 percentage points after an anxious days-long wait of the results. The outcome has been challenged by not only Odinga's camp but by 4 out of 7 commissioners at the election body that oversaw the vote. We are following up on these and will be bringing you the latest once that information is available. Now, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission is today expected to hold a consultative meeting with all the contenders affected by the indefinite suspension of elections in 5 electoral seats, which were due to be held on August 23rd, which is tomorrow. The candidates included those contesting in the Mombasa and Kakamega gubernatorial election and 4 constituency seats, that is Pokot South, Kitui Rural, Rongai and Kachaliba. Other candidates are those contesting in 2 electoral ward seats in Nyaki West in North Imenti constituency and Kwanjenga in Embakasi South. The 2 leading candidates in the Mombasa gubernatorial election, Abdul Somad Nasir of ODM and Hassan Sarai of UDA, confirmed that they had been invited to the meeting, which will take place at the Bomas of Kenya. However, Abdul Somad has hinted that he would not be attending the meeting and will instead send his running mate, maintaining that the election ought to be held tomorrow as earlier gazetted.
Hii ni mara ya kwanza ya kwa watu wenye kukaa katika maeneo bunge na maeneo county tofauti kuweza kuitwa kwa mkutano unaoitwa consultative meeting. Consultative meeting ilikuwa ifanywe pale kwanza kabla hawajaamua kuahirisha election ya kwanza na kuamua kuahirisha election ya pili. Sababu walozitoa ni kuwa kuna tatizo la usalama. Msimamo wetu sisi, atakayeweza kuhudhuria mkutano huo kwa upande wa Mombasa atakuwa ni deputy governor wetu, bila ya kuwa watakuwa ni wenye kukubaliana na jambo lolote. Msimamo wetu unaendelea kuwa ya kuwa ni lazima election zifanywe katika siku ambayo inayohitajika, the gazetted day ya tarehe 23 Agosti. We are aware ya kuwa Chebukati na wenzake wanajaribu kufanya hizi election zilingane na Supreme Court ruling ya presidential. This is part and parcel of Kenya, and so is Kakamega and the other parts.
Our teams are camping at the Bomas of Kenya, waiting for that meeting to happen. If it will, we will be bringing you that in a subsequent news bulletin. Now, COVID vaccine uptake in the country is picking up again, with more Kenyans volunteering to be injected with a life-saving dose. Saturday, the Ministry of Health disclosed that the total number of vaccines administered is 2018, while the total number of people fully vaccinated over the same period stands at 564. The figures are impressive given that this was on a weekend. For instance, the ministry administered 8,164 doses of COVID vaccines, while the proportion of those who got their second vaccine stood at 3,386 in a single day. The latest update has seen the proportion of adults fully vaccinated rising to 34.4%. And the family of the Kenyan nurse who drowned in Canada while live streaming her swimming session on Facebook said they are stranded in flying her body back home. Helen Wendy Nyabuto was reportedly working as a nurse in Toronto. In the video, which has since gone viral, appears to be in high spirit as she swims from one side of the pool to the other. The 24-year-old regularly takes intervals after each cycle to respond to comments and answer questions fielded on a live stream chat. She at one point makes subsequent trips from her side of the pool to the other, but 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the video, she can be seen struggling to stay afloat after she seemingly strayed into the deep end. Of the family, we pray that the family gets the help that they need, and we also send our condolences to them. And Somalia Health Minister Ali Haji Aden has confirmed that the death toll from a devastating 30-hour siege by Al-Shabaab jihadists at a hotel in Somalia's capital Mogadishu has climbed to 21 as anxious citizens awaited news of missing relatives. The gun and bomb attack by Al-Qaeda-linked group on the popular Hyatt Hotel caused parts of the building to collapse, with many people feared trapped inside since the assault began Friday evening. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aceto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM.
Okay, 2 minutes after 8 o'clock, traffic is already thumping from wherever you look at it, really. Jogger Road started early And we're looking at in and outbound traffic all the way through to the City Stadium roundabout, onto Landis, out towards Kamkunji. That is a no-go zone. If you're heading in that direction, you might want to think about turning back and using an alternate route for now. Outer Ring, also extremely busy. Coming in, Lunga joining that. Jogo Road in the other direction. Manyanja, Kangundo, Juja. Whatever you look at this morning, everybody is coming back into the city with a bang. Let's look at the other side of the city. Looking at Langata Road, which, yes, I told you was much better now, but then these people are proving me to be lying. It's not true. Raila Odinga Way, then heading out towards Gong Road, into the city, out towards Westlands. Wherever you're looking at it this morning, it's pretty heavy. It's all red on the Thika Superhighway, trying to get into the city as well. Kiambu Road, well past Coffee Gardens now. I'm sorry, there's nowhere. It's traffic everywhere. Let's talk in a bit and see what it looks like. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text. Bye.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation
7 minutes
Room.
after 8. Good morning and welcome to the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, live on SpiceFM on KTN Home, on SpiceFM KE on YouTube and Facebook. We are going to talk about what we expect to see in the Supreme Court in the coming fortnight. This being the final day for anybody who's willing to file a petition to do so with the Supreme Court. And you already heard from the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party that they intend to basically make use of this day to go and file their petition. So what is it that we expect to see, and what's the procedure? Very many questions to be asked. We'll be joined by constitutional lawyer Waiko Onyoike for the next hour, 1 hour. Before that, let's hear the day's proverb from CT. It's a Chadese proverb.
Chadian. Right.
Chardonnay.
Okay.
Now you're going into the realm of other things.
When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
Yes. The presumption is before it had fallen, the goats could not climb it.
And now that it has fallen,
they are now able to climb it with ease. Because it isn't just one goat. It's several goats. The tree is still the same tree. Yes.
Inafanyiwa madharau ndogo ndogo na mbuzi. It's big majestic tree.
Okay, now here you are. You're at our level.
Yes. I see the goats are not climbing it to do anything. It's just playing on it and all, and just
maybe a little hop, step, and jump.
Yeah. Surely. Okay, so 7 days since the returning officer of the presidential election announced the winner. They end today, and this is the time that's given for anybody who's willing to challenge that announcement by the returning officer of the presidential election to go to the Supreme Court and file a presidential petition. So that is today. Then after this, 14 days for the court to determine. We have sat here with 4 Supreme Court judges before, and we've asked each one of them, City, who are those 4?
Well, let us start with the president of the Supreme Court, Martha Koome. She has been here.
Yes.
Dr. Smokin Wanjala, who is also the president of the Judicial Training Institute.
Yes.
Then we've had Ibrahim Mohammed. And then last...
Who is also in charge of the Committee on Petitions.
Yes, the committee
the
that is now
court.
dealing with these things. Then we had one Justice Lea Nola. Yes, he is the last justice who has been here.
Yes.
Yes.
And all of them, bar none, have said these 14 days that have been given by the Constitution, not enough.
Inadequate.
Not enough for us to actually listen, hear all the arguments, look at everything that's been presented to us, and have enough time to even determine what to do with all the complaints that have been raised for us to determine the outcome of the presidential election. We are joined by Waikwa Wanyoike. He's a constitutional lawyer. He has participated in Supreme Court proceedings with regards to presidential petition. He joins us via video link from the UK. Good morning, Waikwa.
Good morning, Eric.
Good to have you on the show. Once again, always a pleasure having you in the Situation Room. How's the UK?
The UK is fine.
Great. Now, Waikwa, you know that today is a big day in terms of waiting to see the number of parties that go to the Supreme Court to file a petition with regards to the presidential election. Looking from what we saw in 2013 and 2017, what is it that would take somebody to the Supreme Court?
Jane, thank you for having. So just to start with the Constitution. That the Constitution says once you have a declaration of a president-elect, then anybody who has concerns about the validity of the election can challenge that election at the Supreme Court. And the Constitution talks about essentially everybody. So a voter can do that, not just a presidential candidate. And we've seen in the past voters do that. In fact, the petitions have been directly involved in, have related to voters, not presidential candidates. Although when the matters come to court, obviously they get consolidated. And then it's the courts that then have to make a call within the 14 days that you've talked about. But Eric, I think it's important for people to have the context in history. The context in history is that in 2007, following the 2007 elections and all the fracas and violence that ensued, and then when a commission was specifically set up, that's the Kriegler Commission. The Kriegler Commission was specifically dealing with electoral injustice. One of the issues that came up was the question about the confidence that Kenyans had in relation to court. As you remember, Raila Odinga had failed or had refused to go to court. And it's on that basis, and obviously the discussions that had been had while drafting the Constitution, even at Bomas, that the Supreme Court was given these mandate. The 14 days specifically are meant to make sure that the issue relating to validity of a president-elect is resolved fairly quickly so that the country can either go back to a fresh election or can move on with the new president-elect who is sworn in.
Okay. I mean, even taking into consideration the history, Waikwa, and saying that, look, from where we have come, and now this is where the country is at this moment, then going to the Supreme Court today, are we looking at very different issues from what history has previously told us? This is not the first time. 2017 could easily have been the first time probably in the world that such a thing had happened in terms of the decision that was then made by the Supreme Court. Thereafter, we saw certain things then having been set as precedent. We also saw thereafter that then there were changes as dictated then by court that then influenced the manner in which elections would be carried out this year, notably being the transmission of results from tallying centers, right? Are we looking at different issues then going into the next 14 days? Are we looking at different issues, or are we saying more or less we'll have a repetition of what happened in 2017, details of which you were privy to?
I'm not sure we're looking at different issues. There is one issue I think that come up based on public comments made both by candidates, their supporters, and also knowing what happened performers. But just to go with the traditional issue, you expect that there will be contest about numbers, and the contest about numbers, I think, will be at two levels. The first contest will be whether the numbers add up. There has already been significant public conversation about that. The second is whether, in fact, the margin, whether you look at the absolute margin, which is, I understand, just over 200,000. That is the margin between William Ruto and Raila Odinga. Or look at the margin that would have cost us, which I understand again is just about 66,000. Whether any of those margins, when you look at the numbers, they add up, and each has different implication. If the court or if that issue is raised, then the court goes there. But you can almost certainly know there will be a contest on numbers. The second issue, especially that the 2013 petition was a lot about numbers. The 2017 petition changed the tone a bit by adding significant aspects of technology and verifiability of technology. And you can anticipate, especially given the experiences of 2013 and given some of the comments again made by candidates and their supporters and some of what we believe are their lawyers, also the issue of technology will come up, and whether that is the failure, some of the reported failure in terms of Kim's kit, whether it's the procurement of technology, which has already been litigated to some extent, but also has been a bit discussed, or whether, in fact, as in 2017 rather, there was interference with technology, especially after the transition. Remember, our election is not, we don't do an electronic voting, but we use technology for voting. And the technology is used at the identification stage, registration, identification, and then transmission, but the voting itself is manual. So any part of that, three parts where technology is used, can come up. But we also saw some issues come up, including the sensational issue relating to Venezuelan that also touched maybe to some extent on technology. I say there might be one different issue this time, and that is the issue about the commission and who has what powers in the commission. Again, remember the four commissioners who seem to have disagreed with Chebukati. The main question they seem to have raised is who has the powers within the commission to declare, to tally, verify, and declare the results. It seems like their contention, going by the public statements they issued, that they were involved in some of the tallying, they were involved in some of the verification, and towards the tail end, they seem to be claiming that that is when they were not involved. And they're saying that that decision, all the function of tallying and verifying, including declaration, the final declaration, is something they have to be involved in. And in fact, it seems to me that they are suggesting that they have to vote on, and if they are the majority on some of those issues, then the chair is supposed to go by the majority. So that is going to be the issue. I think that will be distinct, likely to be mostly distinct in this election. I think The other issues will be relatively the same issues that have been raised, of course, based on new, different evidence and maybe a little bit of tweaking.
Waikwa, if I can ask you, everybody seems to say, I think the opening statements from anybody, whether you're making a statement on social media over the last 1 week or so, is the first thing that everybody says, the law is clear. So is it really clear then? And even before things get within the four walls of, any court today, what exactly is it? Everybody says the law is clear, that, the chairperson of the commission can go ahead and declare with or without consensus. Then the other side says there must be corporate consensus. The decision comes after, everybody sat and made their own deliberations, and then we say go ahead. What is it? And I think that's very clear that everybody wants to know, what is it?
The law is not clear. Maybe I'm the first one to say this. The law is not clear. On this issue, actually, it's a very, very complex issue. And I think actually when listening to both sides, both the chair's version and listening to the commissioners, I think both sides actually, and based on my own analysis of the Constitution and the electoral law, but also based on the previous practice. Remember, practice also matters in 2013 and 2017. And in 2017, you had two elections, and the two elections differed in approach. Then you realize it's not clear. And additionally, in 2017, there was the case of Maina Kiai, which will become, I think, center stage in this contestation, at least on this issue, because it adds to some of, in fact, it goes to the heart of what happened at Bomas and who should be doing what. Why do I say the law is not clear? So the contestation is whether, just to put it very simply, in terms, when the Constitution in Article 130, I think it's Article 133, says it's the Commission obligation to tally, verify, and declare results. And then when you go to Article 130, Article 10, it says, it talks about the chairman having the responsibility to declare the results. Is there a contradiction there, right? Because you jump from the commission in 133, and then you come to 10, and then for declaration specifically, it talks about the chair. So is there a distinction? But let's go back a bit. Something that seems to have to be missed by the four commissioners, but also haven't seen elaborated even by the chair. Who is the commission? Who is the commission? Is the commission the 6 commissioners and the chairperson? What about the secretariat? Is the secretariat the commission? And so when we talk about tallying and verification, is that responsibility on the commissioner, or is it on the secretariat, or is it on the chair, or is it on the corporate body, including secretariat and the commissioners, or just the sort of what you would call the body of
the institution?
Yes. So the lack of clarity. Remember, pragmatically, commissioners don't tally numbers.
Yeah.
It's the secretary that tallies numbers. We are talking about over 46,000 polling stations, and then you have to do those tallies. It's not the commissioners. Commissioners may be there to look at how the numbers are being tallied, which is probably partly verification. But even the verification, some of the verification is being conducted by the secretariat. And so what do you do? People need to go and look at the history of 2017. After the Supreme Court nullified the election, what happened? Remember, there was a statement by Wafula Chebukati, and there are questions, for example, whether certain senior officers of the commission were involved in the second election, including the then CEO. So you ask, how do you resolve that? And then finally, when you say, for example, you say the commission, there are questions about majority and whether, for example, the chair is going by the majority. What is it? What are we talking about there, and which decision are we talking about? For example, I can ask a rhetorical question.
Mm-hmm.
If the two sides they are split 3-4, we will always likely have a 3-4 split whenever we have 7 commissioners, which now seems to be the tradition. In fact, 2017, at some point, there were questions about how the commission was split. If one side, if the numbers add up to one thing, the majority, and this time assume the majority includes the chair, decides the numbers should have added to another thing, and there is a vote taken by the 7 commissioners, what does that mean? And so what does it mean for the actual numbers representing how the voters voted?
Yeah.
And what is the chair, who is supposed to finally declare, supposed to do? And then let's go back to Maina Kiai, very, very briefly. Maina Kiai says, and this is the most important thing about Maina Kiai case, is that the results at the polling station are final. So then the question becomes, what are the commissioners and the commission doing when it's verified at Bomas, if the results at the polling station are final? And what are they supposed to do when, for example, they find discrepancies in the process of verification? And so that will come up. And so if they find significant discrepancies, for example, which could alter the outcome, either because it could bring about a runoff or because it could substitute who initially had the numbers and was thought to be president-elect to another person, what do you do and get the results at the polling station are final? So you see why, for me, I say the law is not clear on this, and it will take actually very significant guidance by the Supreme Court on what should have happened. And in my own view, I don't want to go into this. I think both sides are missing out on something. I don't think either side is.
We have many more questions to ask you, Aiko, but let's take a break at this point because we'd like to understand what's been happening in the last 7 days. If you were to put yourself in the shoes of those who are preparing to go ahead with this petition, from the Azimio side, from the IEBC side, from the Kenya Kwanza side, what is it that they need to prepare before they go to court? How do they organize themselves? Do they need to have leaders? Do they need to have very many other teams? The few lawyers that we say speaking in the Supreme Court, are they the only ones who are involved in preparing for the petition? All these intrigues and intricacies are part of what we'd like to understand. Waikwa Wanyoike is a constitutional lawyer. He is one of the lawyers who participated in previous presidential election petitions in the Supreme Court. He's taking us through the thinking behind the teams and also taking us through the understanding what exactly happens in a presidential petition. 29 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We're live on SpiceFM, on KTN Home and online. Let's take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I like listening to you guys. You're the default radio station in my car in the morning. Even the children listen to you guys.
I agree Parliament has failed this country. And I will say it again. We have not done what we should have done.
We know in this country, the Kenya prison sector is one of the most underfunded sector.
The way it is being done and the way we're calling it Huduma Namba the Msema Kweli is because all records will be there. You know, there are people who are now billionaires with no history as to how they got all these assets.
Yes. Anything that the president does that is not in accord with the Constitution is an illegal act. He shouldn't be doing it and he shouldn't be sitting here and trying to sort of guise it up.
I totally believe live transmission of results and allowing Kenyans to be able to view all these results. I believe that it will be impossible to steal elections.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
The sun is up in Nairobi at 16. We'll see highs of 24. We'll see highs of 25 in a sunny Nakuru at 15. And it's 17 and cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 22 and lows of 11. We'll see highs of 23 in Eldoret, where it's sunny at 15. It's 23 and sunny in Mombasa, highs of 28 and lows of 21, and we'll see lows of 23 in a partly sunny Malindi, currently at 25. It's 21 and sunny as well in Kisumu, highs of 30 and lows of 19, and 28 will be the high in a sunny Kakamega at 21. It'll go down to lows of 15 today in Kakamega. The rain is coming down in Mombasa, in Kampala, at 21, highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 29 in a rainy Dar es Salaam as well at 22. 7 degrees and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 19 and lows of 6, and it's mostly cloudy in Lagos at 24. We'll see highs of 29. We'll see highs of 29 as well in a partly sunny Kinshasa at 23.
Chilled Spice.
Heavy traffic continues this Monday morning in most parts of the city, looking off of Mombasa Road today through to North Airport Road and out towards Outer Ring. That still continues. We're looking at that whole industrial area circuit of Lunga Lunga, Lusaka, Jogo Road and Likoni Road onto the interchange of Mombasa Road, and that continues to be absolute madness. Have you taken a look at the Thika Superhighway coming in from Kiambu County? We've got quite a lot of traffic inbound, bumper to bumper, going into the city, as well as coming off of Kiambu Road towards Muthaiga Square. You're going to see Wangari Maathai Highway clogged up quite some today. Coming out of Westlands, you're thinking about using Wangari Maathai to connect with the Thika Superhighway, you might want to think again, because it's going to slow you down just a tad. Your exits on the Nairobi Expressway coming out of Westlands also quite packed. The CBD is an absolute mess this morning, because traffic is not moving as you're trying to get in from Muranga Road coming off of Thika Superhighway. Let's keep an eye on things, guys. What's going on where you are? Talk to us. SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
SpiceFM Nyeri. SpiceFM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
2079, we continue with conversation with Waiko Onyoike, who's joining us via video link. Waiko is a constitutional lawyer. We're looking ahead into the 2022 petition at the Supreme Court. So Waiko, looking at, let's say, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, which has indicated that they are going to file a petition at the Supreme Court over this, when do you think they made the decision, and when did they start preparing for this petition?
When did they make the decision? I assume right after they got the result, although in fact there's a possibility that they could have, given the trend, seeing how the results were coming in, they could have made that decision slightly earlier. But in fact, that doesn't say everything, because one of the things I would assume that every presidential team, as part of the logistical team, when presidential teams are being formed during campaigns, one of the things that a presidential candidate has to always think about, and especially the consequential or the leading presidential candidate, is that there is likely going to be a challenge at the Supreme Court following the results. And any diligent presidential candidate would start putting together a legal team. So we are talking about legal teams having been created a year ago. Some of these candidates have advantage because they've done this previously, and they already have individuals they go to and who already know the trend, have participated. So it may take less time to bring them up to speed. But some candidates may not have that advantage. So the preparation in terms of putting together the team has to start fairly early. And then they have to to prepare on two possibilities. One, the possibility that you will be the petitioner, and so what do you need as a petitioner? Or you'll have to defend the petition if you are the one declared president-elect. And you can almost expect that both camps may anticipated that they could be on either side, just given how the campaigns were going. And so the preparation is slightly different when you're thinking about preparing to launch the petition or preparing to defend a petition. But you have to anticipate that and to put together not just the human, but other logistical arrangements in place.
Sounds to me like they both prepare for both eventualities, which means that they both know what they'd like to raise in the Supreme Court, which would be, of course, painting the IEBC as having bungled the election, or on the other hand, showing that the IEBC did not bungle the election, which means that they could already see where the loopholes would be in the run-up to the election.
Of course. And Eric, IBC is the other party, and IBC will always be a party, whether the claim is brought by Wajakoya or just your regular voter. So if there is one common denominator that has to be prepared ahead of time is IBC, and you can be sure also IBC has been preparing for quite a long time. They knew at least some of their lawyers, especially the lawyers who do a lot of heavy lifting, which is what most of the time the public doesn't see. The public gets to see the celebrity lawyers, the big names, the ones who show up in court and present. And most of those big name lawyers actually come into the game very, very late. A lot of them are procured after the results are announced. There are the little team that actually works on the case is a team of maybe lawyers who are not very, very prominent and who would have started the work, and especially for IBC, long time. Let me say this, and this is where I should have started. Preparing for a presidential election petition, whether you are preparing to bring the petition or to defend the petition, but more so to bring the petition, is such a Herculean task. It's a Herculean task for a number of reasons. The first is because of the number of days that we talked about earlier. The time is so short, and the amount of work that one has to do is so much that if you don't have your all your ducks in a row, even before the declaration of the results, you'll fall behind. And this is why you see parties would want to file earlier. In fact, sometimes parties will give statements indicating we'll file 2 days before the deadline, but they come down to the wire. And this time round, the time has been reduced somewhat. In the last two elections, the Supreme Court accepted filing up to midnight of the last day. This time, they are only accepting filing until 2 p.m. And I can almost certainly tell you, for most of the parties who are contemplating filing, or individuals filing the petition, most of them will be scrambling up to the last minute just because of the amount of work. Why? And again, for your listeners, Eric, we have to understand when you go to Supreme Court to try and question the validity of an election, you have two pathways. The first thing a lawyer does is to develop what we call case theory. What is it that you're going to be telling the Supreme Court to convince it that the election was not validly conducted? Some of the issues we talked about earlier, those are formulated as the case theory. But what a case theory does is to put you on one of two tracks. Are you going to do an evidence-heavy petition, or are you going to do mostly a legal issue petition? Let me give you an illustration. If you go to 2013 presidential petition, there were those two kind of petitions. The petition that Raila Odinga brought in 2013 and some members of civil society led by Gladwell Otieno, those were evidence-heavy petitions. They are questioning about numbers, tallying. They are including almost, you find 20,000 forms included as part of evidence. So those are evidence-heavy petitions. The 2017 Raila Odinga petition and the later petition that was filed after the rerun by the civil society, which is the petition I directed, those were evidence-heavy petitions. However, in 2013, if you go back, there was a petition that was brought that was not evidence-based petition, and that was a petition brought by Moses Kuria, Itumbi, and a lady called Jemakio. And that petition just asked one question. In calculating the 50 plus 1 vote, do you base that calculation on all votes cast or only valid votes? In that case, if you are the petitioner, you're not filing much evidence. Beyond filing the Form 30, what now is Form 34C on the total number and how the commission calculated its percentage, you don't need to file much. But when you are filing an evidence-heavy petition, and especially because the Supreme Court uses a relatively high standard in requiring somebody to be able to show enough to invalidate the election, then you have to file a lot of evidence. And we can go through the type of evidence that is needed on either issue. But that brings me to just the capacity you need in terms of personnel. First, you need lawyers. Any team, especially the presidential team, I doubt that any of them has less than 20, 30 lawyers working on this petition, which is not a small, just even coordinating that number of lawyers is not an easy feat. At one given time when we were preparing for our petition in 2017, sometimes I would count 80 people in the room running around, not all lawyers, of course, because you have to have people who are photocopying. We at one point you have maybe, and ours was not necessarily the grandest production, but you have like 4 photocopiers running 24 hours, 80 pages per minute, and you have people manning those, organizing documents. You have people reading documents. The Supreme Court has weird rules. For example, it says every document filed at the Supreme Court has to be speech bound. You can't just bind anyhowly. Every document that is filed by the Supreme Court has to be, you have to show every 10th line, and so people have to mark each page where every 10th line is. So things like that. And so it takes so much energy to be able to put everything together. And you're talking about tens of thousands of pages. When you think about just Form 34, I think it's over 600 pages, if I'm not mistaken. You have to produce 8 copies for the court, mostly in big paper because of the legibility. And then you have to produce maybe another 20 copies because at the end of the day, you end up maybe with 20 parties. It's a very, very big production. So I can tell you, anybody involved in this petition most likely have had any sleep in the last, or more than the last 7 years.
Waiko, let me ask you this question. I'm looking at our electoral processes, and it looks like we have begun a tradition of always going to the Supreme Court. It's like an inevitability. We will end up at the Supreme Court. What would you say needs to happen with our processes so that it becomes a rarity, that people only go to the Supreme Court on that rare occasion as opposed to expecting it to be the norm?
CT, I don't know whether we'll fully get rid of the Supreme Court, but I hear you, and we won't, because elections are such every fought contest, and sometimes becomes very, very personal. The stakes are so high, and of course the presidential petition, the stakes are even higher. And because under the Constitution also, it's not just the presidential candidate who can bring petitions, citizens can do that, then it's very hard to anticipate that it's going to be soon before you see Supreme Court not having election petition. What might happen over time, and I think it's going to happen, and maybe relatively quickly, is you might see us getting into the tradition of less and less petition brought by the candidates themselves. And that means something for the court. Usually it's less pressure for the court, although not always. And the reason I say that is, for example, if over time we are able to deal with the problems that we've had with IBC, which have been consistent, the fallout between commissioners, accusations about some commissioners siding with one side or another, and those suspicions, questions about the Secretariat and whether some of the staff of the Secretariat are being used by candidates and political parties to interfere with elections. As long as those issues persist, you will always, then you can expect that as long as the people still have questions about the independence of the Electoral Commission, there will always be questions brought on the validity of the presidential election. But again, and I'm not sure we have enough evidence on this. Even for other elections, we've had very many petitions, election petitions, even in other positions, the members of parliament, governors, and MCAs. But I think the record is starting to show that there are less and less petitions there. This time round, we've seen people concede quite quickly. I think people are starting to realize that unless you have very good grounds, you just don't learn to court. And I'm hoping over time that will also happen with presidential petition. I also think it might change depending on who the candidates are and what those candidates are seen to represent. So there are quite a number of factors that might help change that tradition, but it's going to take a while. I wouldn't call it for the next 2 or 3 cycles of our elections. I think we still have
conceding an election, Waikwa. Can you unconcede? I mean, what is the legal position once somebody has conceded? Is it a cast in concrete, or can they turn around and say, I wasn't sleeping well that day? So my thoughts on this subject, now that I'm wide awake, I am thinking this.
The court doesn't, there is no legal concept of conceding in an election that takes away candidates or voters' right to bring a petition. So the fact that we saw quite a number of losers in the members of parliament and governor position conceding doesn't mean those people can't bring petitions anyway, even though they are public statements on that. Of course, their public statements, good lawyers are able to use those public statements as evidence to some extent, but that by itself is not sufficient. A candidate or even a voter cannot bring a petition when concession has happened.
Okay. Waiko, this is also something that has played out already in the court of public opinion over the last, 1 week or so. There are opinions that are, going up and about. Many have said that the Supreme Court then must take into consideration the politics of the day, and that many have said that this judgment will be a political one. We've said, all right, how do we then know what the court is going to say? However, question is, does the court or do judgments take into consideration the political pulse of the country at the time, or is it going to be purely, evidentiary to say that, look, this is what we have before us. We are going to judge on what has been brought before us and not on the politics and the emotion of the day?
So, if you ask a judge that question, they would tell you, of course, judges don't take into account the politics of the day. All judges do is to take into account the facts, the evidence, and the law. That would be the standard response you would get from a judge. But that's not always true. The fact is, cases, especially high-stake cases like a presidential petition, is not fully immune to the politics of the day. However, the way the court goes about it is slightly different from how the public tends to debate it. What the court is likely to do, sometimes it's verbalized, sometimes it's not verbalized by the judges, is by looking at the implication. So the court, for example, looks at what the facts are, what the law says, and then a judge must, and a good judge must ask themselves, if I decide this way, what are the likely implications? And are those implications proportionate? And so, to give you an example, if you go by the standards that the courts have articulated, if there is substantial violation of the law in elections or the Constitution, that is sufficient to invalidate an election. And in most cases, judges will invalidate the election if they find substantial violation. But then, what is substantial violation? And how does a judge assess this is substantial and it's justified, or it justifies nullifying an election? So, for example, a Supreme Court judge may not say it, but how much, for example, does a new election likely going to cost? And what is the likelihood that every box on legality will be ticked? And what are the violations on the law, or what are the irregularities? And the judges, and especially the unverbalized part, have to think about what might be the overall implication if we nullify, both in terms of, for example, issues to do with the functioning of the country, whether it's in the economy, but also more importantly for judges on the rule of law. So it's a very, very delicate balancing act. And my answer is, it's not just the law, it's not just the fact. Judges have to think about the implication of their decision in context of the space they are operating in. And judges live with us. They are there, they are seeing what is happening, they are listening. Of course, a lot of that may be subjective, but that will play out one way or the other in their decision.
In 2013, one of the things that was a hallmark of the Dr. William Mutunga-led Supreme Court was something that had to do with evidence that was disallowed, or at least was presented and then disallowed. I'm asking, what then is the threshold for either allowing or disallowing evidence? So there are different thresholds, but the 2013 threshold was mostly based on time. And time is really critical at the Supreme Court. And I think to some extent, both the court and the lawyers have rectified the mistake of 2013. The court has rectified the mistake of 2013 by being very, very clear on when different things have to be done by. In fact, the court circulated, I think, a few weeks ago, a very reader-friendly schedule on what happens on each day of the 14 days. And so in that way, then the lawyers now understand if you don't get something in by this day, you can
or you can almost not expect the court will accommodate you. And the court, to some extent, has to do that because the 14 days is not a long time. And in actual fact, the court only has about 7 to 8 days to fully deal with this, because the 14 days starts counting from tomorrow, because the last filing day is today. But then the court doesn't have the entire record until almost the 7th day from tomorrow, when parties, the respondents, have filed. So the time is a big threshold. The argument in 2013 was you don't just look at time, because time is a technicality. You also look at the probative or the nature of the evidence to see whether it's bringing something so significant that you have to admit it. Otherwise, if you fail to admit it, is an injustice. You also look at why did the parties not have the evidence in good time, and why are they producing it late? Sometimes it could be the failing by IBC, for example, and I'm not saying in 2013 that was the case. So the court has to balance those issues. But I can almost tell you certainty. If any party is filing anything late in this election, it's likely, or in a presidential petition rather, it's likely not going to be admitted. And it gets even more complicated when you have more than one presidential petition, because the court has to process, even if 100 petitions are filed, it has to process all those 100 petitions within 14 days. So it's reasonable for the court to be very, very firm. And it's also unfair to the parties, because the parties are around to file evidence later than when the court expects them to file. It's also a very onerous task on the parties who have to respond to be able to deal with that evidence. And a lot of the time, you have to go to the field to be able to find evidence to respond to what has been done.
Finally then, Waikwa, where do you stand? What's your stand on the issue of the 14 days? Is it sufficient time to deal with a presidential petition, or is it not?
You know, Eric, and I've debated this, including in some of the colloquium with judges. I am still not 100% convinced that we need more than 14 days. And for a number of reasons. You have to take everything into context. This is the context. When you're talking about 14 days, we're actually talking about 21 days from the day the declaration was made, right? And then the likelihood, for example, and going to back to 2017, if there is nullification, a new cycle is started. If you have so much time, you could have paralysis for over a year, especially if the time is so long.
Yeah.
And remember, as long as people are waiting for the resolution of who is validly elected, that has significant consequences on the ability of the people to focus, and it has consequences on the economy as well as cultural activity. And the second reason is we've seen cases come to High Court, of course not with the same level of evidence, not the same level of intensity, and judges have actually dealt with those cases, and talking about a lot of time within a very short time. So at the end of the day, I think, yes, maybe something like 21 days might be a bit more acceptable to the court and to everybody else, but there will never be a much number of days. And I think it comes down more to case management and the court becoming more in terms of enforcing its rules, especially on parking, and how counsel is. And I think the court is fair. It did very well in 2017. I expect to see them efficient in 2022. So I wouldn't. I'm not too bored
on that. Waikwa, thank you very much. Thank you. Waikwa Onyoike is a constitutional lawyer. He's been talking to us about this presidential petition and what we expect to see. Keep it here for more conversations. In the next hour, we talk to NCIC Commissioner It's now 9 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Azimio Moja is today expected to file its petition in the Supreme Court to challenge the presidential election results and the announcement of Kenya Kwanza flag bearer William Ruto as the president-elect on August 9th. In the August 9th general election, the Odinga-led team has been silent on the progress of the case, stating that they have a strong case that will prove the election was not held in a free and fair manner as expected. Odinga and his team has maintained that they are sure the case will bring out the irregularities associated with the process.
Na wale tulifanya uchaguzi tukawa na maswali na sheria imeturuhusu maswali twayaipeleka kotini kwa mahakama kuu.
There will be no reconciliation, there will be no peace, there will be no justice until truth is known. And truth is going to be known because we already know it ourselves, and we are going to show it wide and open. Kenyan people spoke loudly on the 9th of August, spoke so loudly that the voice of the people of Kenya will not be muzzled. It will not be taken away. That the victory of the people of Kenya will not be taken away.
And if you have political challenges like we do now, Baba na Mama, take heart. The Lord has overcome the world.
Without justice, there can be no lasting peace, because justice is the foundation of lasting peace, and all we are seeking is justice.
Kenyan people spoke loudly on the 9th of August, spoke so loudly that the voice of the people of Kenya will not be muzzled. It will not be taken away. That the victory of the people of Kenya will not be taken away.
This as Kenya Kwanza insists that they are ready for the petition, adding that this is a hurdle they can surmount just like they did all the other hurdles.
The journey ahead is a very small journey, Your Excellency. The court, Lily, we are ready for the court. I'm sure, Your Excellency, all those other handles and barriers you have dealt with, the last battle will be in court. And I believe God is ahead of us in that battle.
Watu wa Nyandarua wamesema wao walifanya kazi yao na wakafunga file katika kiti ya president. Na wakasema kama kuna mtu anataka kufungua hiyo file, wako tayari kufanya hata zaidi ya hiyo.
Kwa mara ya kwanza wapinzani wetu hawajapanga maandamano, hawajapanga yale mambo mengine mengi, and we want to thank them so that we can begin to grow the democracy of our country in the right direction.
Still matters election, and Mombasa governor candidate Abdul Samad Nasir of ODM has stated that he will not attend today's meeting as convened by IEBC at the Bomas of Kenya. The commission called for a consultative meeting with all the contenders affected by the indefinite suspension of election in 5 electoral seats, which were due to be held tomorrow. The candidates include the contesting in Mombasa and Kakamega gubernatorial election and 4 constituency seats: Pokot South, Kitui Rural, Rongai and Kachiliba. Abdul Samad maintains that the election should be held tomorrow as earlier gazetted.
Hii ni mara ya kwanza ya kwa watu wenye kukaa katika maeneo bunge na maeneo county tofauti kuweza kuitwa kwa mkutano unaoitwa consultative meeting. Consultative meeting ilikuwa ifanywe pale kwanza kabla hawajaamua kuahirisha election ya kwanza na kuamua kuahirisha election ya pili. Sababu walozitoa ni kuwa kuna tatizo la usalama. Msimamo wetu sisi, atakayeweza kuhudhuria mkutano huo kwa upande wa Mombasa atakuwa ni deputy governor wetu, bila ya kuwa watakuwa ni wenye kukubaliana na jambo lolote. Msimamo wetu unaendelea kuwa ya kuwa ni lazima election zifanywe katika siku ambayo inayohitajika, the gazetted day ya tarehe 23 Agosti. We are aware ya kuwa Chebukati na wenzake wanajaribu kufanya hizi election zilingane na Supreme Court ruling ya presidential. This is part and parcel of Kenya, and so is Kakamega and the other parts.
This is IEBC is expected today to give its response to cases that were filed in court demanding that the election in the areas that were postponed be held. Tomorrow we are following up on those and we'll be bringing the updates to you in a subsequent news bulletin. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
A few minutes after 9 o'clock, and traffic still continues in the city, and we're looking at it coming hot and heavy from Jogger Road. Started very early, still the thing. Looking a little bit better on Raila Odinga Way, but Langata Road, as you get to that interchange junction, it still continues with traffic. Coming off the Thika Superhighway, still heavy, really heavy as you come past the drive-in, and as well as Kiambu Road, that still continues. In and outbound traffic continues to be a thing this morning. It definitely is a Monday. In the CBDs where you see the most of it as well. Okay, so let's see in about half an hour when we should be out of traffic hour what it looks like, but it looks like it's going to be extended traffic this Monday. Let us know what's going on where you are. SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
Okay,
The
it's 7
only
minutes
way to
after
start
9.
your
We
day.
come into the final hour of the Situation Room today, Monday, the 22nd day of August, 2022. 7 days since the IEBC chairman, the returning officer of the presidential election, announced the winner of this election. And there was some rejection and political contestation, which should be culminating in filing of a presidential election petition of the Supreme Court today. Let's talk about peace building and maintenance of peace around the country. We have a commissioner from the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Before we welcome and introduce him to the show, let's hear the day's proverb.
When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
When the baobab tree has fallen, the goats start climbing it.
Mm-hmm. No story of goats climbing it before it has fallen, but when it has fallen.
That's when they start.
When it's lying in state, then.
That's when they come in.
Mhm.
Commissioner Sam Corner from NCIC. When you listen to this proverb, it's from Chad. What do you interpret from this?
I think that in everything that happens, there has to be a state in which it cannot be accessed by others unless it is vulnerable when it falls. Yeah, that's my interpretation.
So it's an exposed vulnerability here of the baobab tree. Before this, it was fine. Now it's fallen, so it's vulnerable.
Every Dick and Harry can now climb it.
People who would not ordinarily access it
Will now have the pleasure of playing around with it.
when it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Huh.
Like Mobutu Sese Seko's mansion.
Indeed.
Or better still, like the presidential palace in Sri Lanka.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's it, eh? It's fallen goods walking in and out willy-nilly. Commissioner, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Again.
Again, yes, correct. Yeah.
So, as the NCIC, you've been running a national campaign on election bila noma, saying Penda Jirani, let's all maintain peace, elections come and go, let's observe peace and quiet during this period. It's been 14 days since we went to the polls. What is your observation so far? Have we maintained the peace or have we not?
Yeah, I think by and large, Kenyans have maintained the peace, and I really want to laud even the media, including the Standard Media Group, because we ran together a campaign called Election Bila Noma Penda Jirani, where we went across the country telling Kenyans the importance of good neighborliness, the importance of them keeping peace. And I want to say in this election, Kenyans have demonstrated that we can actually cast our votes and maintain peace. They have also demonstrated that our democracy has matured, and the political leaders who dissented the outcome of the presidential elections shows the right route, which is to go to court. And I want to commend both the President-elect William Ruto and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, because they did make statements, especially a day before the announcement of the results, where they called upon Kenyans to maintain peace, to uphold good neighborliness. And I think that one contributed also to the calm that we currently experience across the country. So I will say it's been a triumph of the spirit of the Kenyan people. They have demonstrated once again that they can actually go beyond the tribal and identity-based divisions that usually come around politics. And I would want to say that has also been tested, because the behavior of the political leaders and political supporters at Bomas, especially around the time the results were being announced, was a test to the people of Kenya, because they were watching it. They were trying to start some form of hostility, or maybe even create conditions that can make Kenyans rise against each other. And I'm glad that the people of Kenya did not buy that kind of behavior. They did not get into sucked into that kind of action. And that is why it is a triumph for us as an institution. With all the partners that we worked with, we say, so far, we've delivered the peace that we wanted. We have had elections bila noma. We also had announcement of presidential elections bila noma. And we believe, moving to the Supreme Court, we shall resolve this issue through the constitutional and legal means that are given in our constitution. And we do expect that once the Supreme Court delivers its verdict, that should be the end of the dispute around elections, and Kenya should move forward.
Commissioner, do you think there has been a graduation? I mean, obviously, looking at, the time within which NCIC has been in operation, for example, and around elections when we see disputes, do you think there has been a graduation from how people felt and expressed that feeling, unfortunately, in violence, until the time that we see now? Has there been a maturity in the way in which people act, or is there exhaustion?
I think the 2007 and 2008 experience in Kenya was a wake-up call for most citizens. There are citizens and people who still have the scars of that particular period. And as a country, we promised ourselves that never again shall we go that route. Of course, our elections continue to be seen within the prism of violence and tension. This particular time, the reason why I think we got the peace we needed during the election is because we had all stakeholders, the media, government entities, civil society, community groups. All of them started early enough to speak about the need for peaceful elections, and also to encourage different groups not to be incited or manipulated by political groups or divided according to their ethnic identities. So that collective effort by different institutions and the fact that it started early is what I will say made these elections substantially peaceful. And also the fact that the approaches we adopted this time, the peace caravan, the road shows, the peace actors for the first time went to the people the same way politicians go to the people. So it was a campaign about vote for peace, keep your neighbor, respect each other, tolerate your political differences, and so on, the same way politicians were looking for their own vote. In fact, I remember when we were coming from one of the road shows at the airport in Eldoret, one of the politicians from one of the formations told me that you, NCIC, and people who are talking about peace are going to create many spoiled spots because the Kenyans will go and look for somebody called peace to vote for them.
To vote for peace.
But I told them that we often take for granted the fact that we need this peace, and it's only when you lose peace that you realize the importance of peace.
Yes.
And I think the message we took to the people of Kenya, and I could feel in all the roadshows and the interactions we had with the groups that the people were listening and they were connecting with the message that we took to them. I also want to say that the fact that coalition building around communities and ethnic identities took center stage in these elections, where if you go to Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, One Kenya Alliance, the distribution of the political leaders and the elite in those camps cut across different ethnic identities and also different parts of the country.
Yeah.
So in a way, the crafting of coalitions during campaigns more or less recognizes the problem Kenya has. And that is why there was an emphasis about Kenya Kwanza, One Kenya, Azimio la Umoja, Muungano. You have all those things. What we are hoping is that apart from now collecting different leaders to form the coalitions, which help to neutralize, because you could not say this is for this tribe. You had Kikuyus in almost all the coalitions. You had Luos in almost all the coalitions, Luyas and so on. That one helped to distribute the problems of identity across, and it contributed to not categorizing one particular coalition as belonging to one community or to one part of the country. So we are hoping that since the naming of the coalitions and the formation of these groups around ethnic groups and regions is what has happened, we hope even in terms of whoever takes over, the policies will actually prioritize the need to build a cohesive nation, to make sure that Kenya now grows from being seen as a collection of tribes to being a country that everybody is proud of and people are patriotic and everyone is included, just the same way they included everyone in forming the coalitions.
Yeah. I'm also hearing you say then that NCIC cannot do this alone. Previously, it was, look, if something is going amiss in the country, NCIC, you must handle this. Somebody said something at a rally over the weekend. NCIC then must come in too. But from what you're saying, then NCIC can be there as a commission, but everybody then who is an interested party has to be an interlocking system, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, the challenge of creating peace and building cohesion in any nation cannot be done by one single institution. And that is one thing we recognized at the beginning as NCIC when we were appointed in 2019, that to deliver a peaceful election in Kenya will require, of course, the leadership from NCIC, the coordination, but everybody else has to put some contribution to it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, especially the Kenyan media this time, I am sure most of you did not make a lot of money in those peace processes that we had, because it was also your contribution to ensure that we have a peaceful election. If you go to the communities, we were able to set up community structures, even standby structures now as we speak, where if there is a dispute, they are able to respond at that level.
Yeah.
Because if you operate from the national level as NCIC does, sometimes the time of responding to an incident is undermined by the fact that you are actually not available near enough to respond to it. So by the time you get there, that incident has grown, it has spread in terms of from one village to the next, from one group to the next, and that becomes more complicated. So it is true, not one single institution can deliver peace. Not one single institution can create the level of cohesion we require in the country. It requires all of us to work in synergy and in partnership, as we did in this particular election, for us to get it. So it is true. It's not NCIC alone which can do it. We are there to provide the coordination, to provide the leadership required, but we will pull other institutions to support us, as we did in these particular elections.
Talk to us about what has happened in the various communities where prior to the election there were some skirmishes. some flare-ups of violence, which many observers were saying is linked to the election. Let's say Marsabit, some parts of Isiolo, some parts of Lamu, some parts of Kerio Valley, where there were all these allegations, or let's say reports, that maybe what is happening here is some form of voter suppression or some form of just voter realignment. What happened around this time when the voting took place?
First of all, in all situations of conflict, and especially in the Rift Valley region and parts of Kenya, what you realize is that in places where communities have had unresolved grievances, either because of previous clashes between themselves or because of election-related issues or concerns around questions of land, where they have not been resolved substantively, during elections, those unresolved community grievances become the proxy the politicians use to advance their political campaign. They will go into the communities and remind them that your land was taken by this community. During this time, we fought, there was violence, your people were killed. So that alone is always something we are wary as an institution, that if there is an ongoing conflict or unresolved grievances that pre-exist the election, that one is going to be used for mobilization by those political leaders who will want to incite ethnic tensions in order for them to get the votes. The second dimension to conflict and politics is in places like you've mentioned, like Marsabit, where you definitely have a conflict that has been ongoing almost for many years now, and in other places. So where there is an ongoing conflict, and that conflict has identity issues, either clan or tribe, obviously during elections, what the politicians do is to create conditions for violence, either for their opponents not to vote or to disrupt the process of voting in order for that particular process to favor one of the candidates. So we've seen that in many places across the country. In others, they will even create violence, like, for example, in Samburu North, where perhaps the swing vote will come from a particular community. Then the political leaders who believe they will not be voted by that particular community invest in violence so that that swing vote disappears or is significantly reduced in a way that will not affect the dynamics of or the outcome of the elections. So we have all those the dimensions to the question of violence, conflict, and elections. And it even becomes more problematic when now you've got illicit small arms and light weapons, for example, in the north region of the country or in northeastern and parts of the place like Isiolo and Marsabit. Because that's where now also the criminal element creeps in, and those who have the guns utilize the void that comes during elections to advance their criminal activities and whatever commercial interest they may have. So it's a very complex relationship when you talk about politics, violence, and elections.
From your analysis of this particular election, did you see it impacting the turnout and then also maybe subsequently the result?
Obviously, in a situation where there is violence or threats of violence, you will find some people will be scared to go and vote. So I will say the response to your answer to your question is yes, there must have been some suppression of some kind. Whether it is significant enough to have altered the outcome of the elections or not, that one is now something we can all interrogate going forward. But I also want to say that the voter turnout was by and large low across the country. And we will have to interrogate why. But from where I sit, part of the reasons why we had this low voter turnout is because Kenyans were actually in a very bad state in terms of the economy. We've just come out of a very difficult period caused by COVID. The conditions of living and the standards of living people are suffering as we speak. And then also the fact that perhaps the holiday was not declared the day after elections. So if you do the calculation of somebody traveling from Nairobi to Kakamega to vote traveling on Monday to vote on Tuesday, and Monday was not a holiday.
Yeah.
That also must have
And
impacted.
Wednesday is not a holiday.
And Wednesday is not a holiday. That must also have impacted on the voter turnout. So, and it's something maybe going forward we should find a way of doing it, because there are people who live in the city but have to travel back to up country to cast their vote. And if there's no enough time for them to do that, and also considering the harsh economic conditions that currently exist, then that way they will say there's no point of going to do that. But it is something that we need to interrogate as a country, because we need at least over 70% of the registered voters to cast their vote, and not as low as we experience in this particular election.
You know, this election, when we're looking at the maths, just looking at the number of registered voters and those whom, according to the IEBC, were eligible to vote, we found that those who didn't vote, in terms of just sheer numbers, were more. 7 or 7.9 million?
Yeah.
Meaning, if those who didn't vote voted, they would have actually been the ones who would have voted in a presidential elect.
Yeah.
Now, we ask the question, what does that tell us about not just who was declared the winner of the election, but what does it tell us about us and how it is we view our elections? Because if you're talking about, there's a term we refer to as a protest vote. A protest vote cannot get any louder. When a third of your population tell you we are really not participating in this, it says something. But the question I want to ask is this. If we look at our electoral process and everything that goes on within it, from the way I have heard you speak, to understand such processes, surely you must understand who the players are. It's a question that always arises. What is it that the Commission has done with regard to profiling and understanding who these players are? Because the violence doesn't happen on its own. And going forward, what is it that the Commission plans to do to ensure that these individuals are actually brought to book?
Yeah, I think the question of voter apathy and the related one of the low voter turnout is obviously a concern to our institution, as it is to other agencies in the country. During the election Bila Noma campaign that we carried out, we were actually arguing that citizens should know that going for elections is their civic duty, and they need to exercise it. Secondly, we were very emphatic that when you have a low voter turnout, or even when people display voter apathy, it can actually be a threat to peace and stability. Because as you've said, if we had more people vote, perhaps the margins between the two presidential candidates will not have been as close as we came to see when the results were declared. So going to vote actually increases the chances of every citizen making their voice and their vote to count. And once you do that, even if there is a tie or a problem arises, you will realize that at your own personal level, you did cast your vote. So what we want to emphasize is the citizens must know that these 5 years you are given every year to review the kind of leaders you have is a very important opportunity that's given to citizens to elect their new leaders who can transform society in a manner in which they promise in terms of their campaigns and policies. And it's a very serious thing. There are people who like joking that elections should not be a serious thing, put it in their lungs. But it is a very serious thing, because that is the opportunity for you as a citizen to critically examine the people who are presenting themselves for elections from the MCA to the president level and see which one of them can actually has a better agenda for you for the next 5 years. If you make it a joke, then we can actually get jokers ascending to office. And we've seen it in the past where people who do not deserve to be leaders ascending to office because those who are serious either take politics as something they are not supposed to involve in. And the citizens also just vote on the basis of the euphoria that the candidate has generated as opposed to the content of what the candidate has for the people. So going forward, we will emphasize the importance of political education, voter education, because everything that happens now, between now and 2027, will be determined by those who we have elected as MCAs, will be determined by those who have been elected to the Senate, National Assembly, and even the President, because they are the ones who will generate or to convert their manifestos into policies and then policies into programs. And if they are not they are not good people, if they are not people who have a better agenda for the country, then the country will suffer and all of us will suffer. So elections is a very important thing. That's my message to the people of Kenya. And as I said, going forward, as a commission, we will keep emphasizing the importance of citizens participating in all electoral processes and in all electoral phases, not just the voting alone, even during campaigns and so on and so forth. And I just want to also to say another observation is when the new constitution was promulgated in 2010, the logic was that if you have 47 devolved entities where resources are devolved, it will reduce the appetite for the presidency. I think the last two elections demonstrate to us that appetite has actually heightened. It hasn't reduced. And that means we may need to find out why devolution did not increase the appetite for people to campaign and fight over seats at the county level. And we still have this obsession with who becomes president, and sometimes it becomes a do or die thing. So that is another observation that we've been able to see. And it tells you that either the 10 years of devolved governance did not impact substantially to the people of Kenya, or perhaps the 10 years, the leaders who have been there did not pay attention to the fact that they actually have the ability to change the lives of the people and develop those communities in a way that they will no longer be bothered about who becomes president. But it's a question that needs to be interrogated because presidential elections remain our threat to peace. A big thing. Yeah.
I think it's the latter, Commissioner. I think if many of these, by the time we were promulgating the Constitution, we had national leaders who are still in existence and they still believe that their next big seat for them is a presidential seat. Now imagine if those national leaders, if Kalonzo had gone for governor of Kitui or Raila had gone for governor of Siaya, then they'd have changed the whole focus from the presidency. But as long as they're still there, and you see they are the leaders that we follow. Anyway, let's talk about this after we come back from the break. It's 27 minutes to 10. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. This week is that week when we are celebrating our birthday. From the 20th of August, for the entire week, we are looking back into the 3 years that SpiceFM has been on air and saying thank you. Thank you to our colleagues. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners. Everybody who has contributed to us being on air for 3 years successfully so. Yeah?
Indeed.
Unawapatia keki? Wewe sasa, wewe kama ndu.
Me. Nangoja cake.
Unangoja cake. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly with our Commissioner Sam Corner from NCIC.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
You've had the luxury of living for 50 years and you cannot still explain yourself. Surely. Oh my God. the reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Oh, okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No.
Since I'm not shipping up.
You're my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the sheep in the bathtub? Or
the sheep man?
Emmanuel Talam used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a sheep. His classmate raises a hand. Teacher, are you talking about the sheep or a sheep goat?
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
18 degrees and sunny conditions in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 24 and lows of 12 today. 14 will be the low in a sunny Nakuru at 17. It's 18 and cloudy in Nyeri, lows of 11, and we'll see lows of 13 in a sunny Eldoret at 17. The rain is coming down in Mombasa at 24. We'll see highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 28 as well in a sunny Malindi at 25. It's 24 and mostly sunny in Kisumu, highs of 30, and we'll see highs of 28 in a sunny Kakamega at 24. The rain is coming down in Kampala at 21, highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 29 in a rainy Dar es Salaam at 23. It's 9 degrees and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 19 and lows of 6, and cloudy at 24 in Lagos, highs of 29 and lows of 24. Mostly cloudy conditions at 24 in Kinshasa, highs of 29 and lows of 21. Going into Monday evening in Beijing, it's sunny at 33. We'll see highs of 34 and 17 and cloudy in Paris, highs of 26. 24 will be the high in a cloudy London at 16. And it's cloudy at 24 in New York Sunday night. Coming into Monday, we'll see highs of 25 and lows of 21.
Spice up your life.
Still continues really heavy on the Thika Superhighway this morning coming into the city. I don't know why that is as crazy as it is, but it is. And there's something going on at Community. Heavy police presence there. Not quite sure what's causing that, but we have traffic then going well into Ngong Road and then into the city, up a hill and then out towards Valley Road. Likely to find out what that is in a short while. Looking at Landis coming off Jogo Road, that's really heavy going towards Kamkunji. The CBD is a beehive of activity this morning. This was that Monday and it seems that it's manic. Traffic hour ends according to the tick-tock of the clock, but on the ground, very, very different. Let's keep an eye on things through the morning. Tell us what's going on where you are. SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
22 to 10, conversation
Spice
continues.
FM,
Eric
Nairobi.
Latif Ndu Okoseti Muga and Sam Corner, Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, talking about promoting peaceful coexistence in the aftermath of the elections. Yes, Commissioner is saying, just looking across the country during this period, we've maintained peace. And the hope is that we continue maintaining peace. When we say that, we are generalizing and saying, we've maintained peace because there was peace before. But there were communities in this country who, before the election, did not know peace, Commissioner. Do they now know peace?
We are talking peace in relative terms. The peace we are talking about is the peace relating to the general election, where we've always had disturbances immediately after the elections, and particularly after the election results are announced. But we know that there are many communities in Kenya that have not enjoyed peace for many years. If you are talking about the Kerio Valley region, Marsabit, Isiolo, even Tana River, and so on and so forth. So we have had groups that have been in constant conflict across the country. And we, as a commission, plan to start a program called Ending Conflict, All Conflicts in Kenya. We have the confidence that we can end all conflicts in Kenya over a period of 5 years because over the last 3 years, we've been able to bring total peace in places like Narok, particularly Narok North and South, save for Transmara. And also, we used to have a perennial problem border problem between Kakamega and Nandi. We intervened there 2 years ago, and last month, we actually went back to celebrate 2 years of peace at the between the border of Nandi and Kakamega, and a similar process at the border of Nandi and Kisumu. So those 3 examples demonstrate to us as an institution that if we continue investing in grassroots interventions in a sustained way, you can actually secure communities from the ongoing violence. The second issue I would like to mention is there are also many parts of the country that have border problems, which often boil out into open violence between different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And those border problems is something that communities just need to be told. For some groups that are not supportive of peace, they think if you show them the border between, let's say, Kisumu and Kericho, that border will be the border between 2 communities. Yet the border is specifically for administrative purposes. And that's why we need to constantly...
Doesn't mean that
it doesn't mean now, if you are a Luo, you cannot be...
Cross.
And your land is in Kericho, you cannot. And that's why we always tell them, even in that particular, because that's a real one, the Sondu region has a problem of border, we'll tell them that even if your land cuts across the 2 counties, you will still own both pieces of land. Perhaps the title will just be one for Kericho, another one for Kisumu or Nakuru and Narok and so on. So those kind of things are the ones that perpetually threaten peace. But I think the saddest thing for our country is the fact that over the years, we have actually squandered opportunities for true reconciliation.
Right.
I say that because if you reflect over the last 15 years, Kenya has had an opportunity to actually embrace total reconciliation and social cohesion, but we always get the opportunity and squander. The first one is the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Accord that came after the mediation of the 2007-2008 post-election violence. That particular accord had very clear, descriptive solutions to some of the problems facing Kenya, from the short term to the long term, and particularly the ones who are calling Agenda 4, where we are supposed to address issues to do with historical injustices, problems of regional imbalance in terms of economic development, the challenge of youth unemployment, and so on and so forth. But we never took time to implement some of those things. What we did was to deliver a new constitution and also to come up with a Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission, which submitted their report, but we never did anything with that report. And so long as those grievances and those challenges remain, it will always be a challenge to secure durable peace in the country. The second opportunity is linked to the first one. When we got the new constitution, was an opportunity for transforming our country and re-engineering it in a different way in terms of inclusion, better governance, and even creation of constitutional commissions, which were supposed to supplement government in a positive way in terms of the different mandates of these institutions, from IBC, National Land Commission, name them, and even NCIC. These were institutions that were created for purposes of supporting government agendas through the themes that have been. But our new constitution has come. We have not changed our habits as a nation. We have a new constitution, but we have not constitutionalized our behavior, and we have not entrenched the principles of the rule of law, the question around Chapter 6 of our constitution, and so on. So those are very important opportunities. The third one that we squandered is when the current president and his deputy joined hands in 2012. And at that time, we know very well the communities that were in conflict, particularly in 2007, 2008, that even led to the 2 leaders being taken to The Hague, the International Criminal Court. By the 2 of them coming together alone, there was pacification of their 2 communities, if you even want to start at that level. But I wish they would have just pushed themselves more to take this union between the 2 of them to beyond politics, to actually bring actual reconciliation between even the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin themselves, or Rift Valley and Central Kenya. We saw it as an opportunity, from a peace-building perspective, we saw it as an opportunity to actually start a real process of social reconciliation.
Yeah.
But it became political, and all of us know where we are now.
It just sort of died.
I don't know whether it died or it is still whatever. The other one is also the handshake between the president and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. When they came out of their meeting, the whole country was tense before that. And you could feel the relief across the country. They came up with the Building Bridges initiative, which was supposed to bridge, so to speak. But we know it also acquired a political angle. We squandered it. So what I'm saying is, we must begin to seize opportunities for reconciliation.
I see a fifth opportunity, Commissioner.
You see, like now, even the implosion between the deputy president and the president from Jubilee times, even church leaders, religious leaders, kept calling on the president and his deputy to reconcile for the sake of the country. Because peace is both something that is lived, but it's also symbolic.
Yeah.
If you see the president and his deputy working together, it affects the mood across the country. If they are pulling apart, the country is pulled apart. And that is why even that initiative and call by religious leaders for the president and his deputy to reconcile was a moment for the nation to come together and embrace reconciliation. So I just want to say, going forward, even after these elections, we must prioritize the need, first of all, to resolve the existing conflicts across communities, to put a final stop to all these border disputes, and then truly move forward as a country with a desire to truly reconcile and forgive each other and begin to love and care for each other.
I was saying I see another missed opportunity, and this is an NCIC. Because the Constitution creates the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, plus the others, the National Commission on Human Rights, like you've said, the National Land Commission. Many of our historical injustices revolve around land. So the National Land Commission, which was supposed to come and look at the historical issues of land and try and resolve them, plus then a commission such as yourself, which is supposed to be looking at those sources of conflict and trying to identify them. The three commissions, plus the others, but at least those three, you, National Cohesion on Human Rights, National Commission on Human Rights, and the National Land Commission, are squandering the opportunity to get us to that point. Because we don't see you strongly enough coming at the national level and saying this needs to happen at a national level, not just at a community level, but we need to have one big push towards first of all, getting the TJRC report out and interrogated and consumed by the public, and two, then implementing this TJRC report.
Absolutely. I agree with you that those are also missed and squandered opportunities. I did infer to it when I talked about the new constitution and the promise it had in terms of even the Article 59 commissions. They were supposed to support government in the way that you've just articulated. For us, as the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, and through the National Land Commission, even the National Gender and Equality Commission, the National Commission on Human Rights, and so on, and all the Article 59 commissions, the so-called constitutional commissions, they have not really delivered as required when they were being created. So to that extent, I agree. And as I said, we should all now move forward from this culture of squandering opportunities or making them missed opportunities when we actually have an opportunity to transform and deal with our issues properly.
Actually, Commissioner, I agree when you say we should. We aren't commissions. We don't have the mandate. They do. NCIC has taken the initiative in many ways to try and fulfill their mandate. The fact that you're here and the fact that Standard Group has some working arrangements with NCIC is a step forward in the right direction. But we're not the only partners you have. You have partners with Nation Media. You have partners with religious organizations. Now, when religious organizations come up and say they are urging the president, I am certain They are behind the scenes activities where they call upon people to reconcile. But then the evidence of it, does one see it in their day-to-day activities? Do they give it a priority so that when they are preaching from the pulpits or when they're talking during their holy days, whether it is a Friday or a Sunday, is it something that they give priority? I know there are some religious organizations that do, but is it something consistent? Because the thing that is consistent are these problems we keep talking about. Consistent. But our activities, is it something that is pronounced once in a while and then let go of? Before an election, after an election, we go back to normal settings until something else comes up and it draws our attention to what needs to be done. NCIC are pivotal in that they can rally. At the end of the day, if there is an issue regarding land, problems will flare up. It will come to your doorstep.
Correct.
When problems arise, they will affect human rights. When human rights are affected, you will have this culture now of problems that never get resolved. NCIC is pivotal. They are like at a point where every commission that we've spoken of, they can actually bring them to the point where they not only join you in doing what you're doing, but ensure. Because if you look at, for instance, the commission that was set up to deal with land issues, the scandals that have surrounded it, hey, goodness gracious me.
It became a land buying commission.
Yeah, you actually ask yourself, these fellows are creating problems which they're supposed to resolve. Yes.
You know, one of the things that we need to recognize is absolutely what you've said. When it comes to issues of peace, cohesion, and reconciliation, people often get to be involved when there is a threat to it or potential threat. For example, during elections, this year, we all spoke about peaceful elections. But after the elections, people disappear. Everyone goes back to their place. And all these problems will remain until the next election again. So you are very right that the call for peace and reconciliation is often because there is a problem that is almost, sensational, like people have been killed, others have been displaced, houses have been burnt, and so on and so forth. But the real work of peace needs to happen when people are stable and calm, as opposed to when they are fighting. Even during this campaign we had for peaceful elections, in communities that were already engaging in terms of dialogue, in terms of markets, they get the message of peace and tolerance and togetherness better than groups that are not in talking terms because of violence or one form or the other. The second thing about these commissions that I would like to put forward is, for all these problems to be resolved, let's just take, for example, the problem of conflict in North Rift, in Kerio Valley. Those conflicts are very complex. For you to resolve them terminally, to end them, you need a sustained program of 15 to 20 years. Why do I say that? One, you need to invest in education so that you increase the level of literacy among those pastoralist communities to a point that there are no idle young people who have nothing else they know except owning that gun and chasing the cow. If you pull all of them to school, and that requires a serious program of investment in, first of all, constructing schools and ensuring people go to school, even if by force. The second thing is you need to invest in infrastructure in terms of places where people can go and do business. Create an environment that is vibrant in terms of economy as you invest on the peace building component, which is the soft side. So for those kind of programs to happen, first of all, you need time. Secondly, you need resources. And that is one of the other challenges all these commissions are facing. If you go to the National Land Commission or NCIC, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, National Gender and Equality Commission, just ask how much they get per year to do the kind of work, to deliver their mandate. That is why most of them, you will see them looking for donors to support their work. Yet they are national institutions. An institution like NCIC, for example, has the agenda that is of a national nature, like issues of patriotism, cohesion, values. They shouldn't be getting money from outside to do that for their own country. our own government and our own people should support that institution to deliver that, because that is the basic duty as a citizen and as a government, to make your citizens more patriotic.
You know, as citizens, we do our bit. We pay these exorbitant taxes with minimum complaint.
So that's why I'm saying there is also issue around resourcing of these institutions that undermines their ability to deliver their own mandate. Obviously, if they were all to work together and maybe work as a team, they are more likely to lobby government for more resources and also to lobby for some activities to be undertaken. For example, just getting the Truth and Justice and Reconciliation report and breathing life into it by implementing part and sections of it. But you know, as you said, the question of land is what is at the heart of some of the grievances we have. Those also who get the instruments of power are also wired in this problem of land. And that is why sometimes there is no incentive for the political leaders and those in power to implement them, because where do you start, who do you touch, and where do you end?
Commissioner, I have a question. I mean, and a lot of these things are hard and fast. You can see them. You can see what the problem is that would then essentially topple peace later, right? You can see the land issue. It is clear. Those have been there for years. But then there's a lot that's subliminal. It's under the surface. You can't really touch it until you hear somebody speak a certain thing. Is this a threat as you see it, as NCIC, as anybody who's looking? Is it a threat that there are things that people might have bubbling under the surface that could essentially come out? And if so, how do you deal with them going forward? This election also has seen, we've heard certain things being said that maybe had been hidden for the last 5 years, right? But it gives them an opportunity to come to the surface. How do you deal with those things? And are they felt truly, or do people just use them during these times for propaganda? And if they're felt, how do you attack them? How do you get rid of them?
If you listen to the testimonies of people who have been affected by violence across the country, first of all, the way we conducted our Truth, Justice and Reconciliation process did not give the citizens, those who are affected, the opportunity to ventilate and say what is in their hearts. Because you require a safe space for you to do that, to say it. Ventilating is a healing process. It makes you heal if you are given an opportunity to say it. So in our work as we go across the country, people are actually hurting as we speak. There are those who have never recovered from the violence of 1992. They still harbor it in their hearts and they transfer it to their children that our condition is the way it is. You'll hear testimonies of people saying, I now live in Thika, for example. But I used to have a huge farm in Molo. Which, for one reason or the other, they had to dispose because they needed to be safe. And they needed some resources. Those are people who have something deep in their heart. They have memories that they have not left them. And they are transferring those memories and bad feelings to their children and other generations. That is why when I use the word true reconciliation, I actually mean it in the comprehensive sense, where you get people, first of all, to say what they have in their hearts, who they think has hurt them over the years, and get an opportunity for them to speak face to face. If you have offended me and you don't get time to speak face to face, I will never heal, you will never heal.
True.
We will never resolve that problem. There are many people and communities in Kenya that are in that state. The anger is still intact. And that is why when it comes to heightened times like politics, a statement, a small statement, revives the feelings and reminds you what happened before. So when I say reconciliation, it is starting with where people are in terms of their feelings, in terms of their emotions and their histories and the relationship they had before. And then moving forward to a point where now I may not forget that you did something for me in 2007 or 2008, or I have scars of being burnt in Naivasha in 2007, 2008. It is now I have accepted and I've forgiven you. So there is the element of also forgiveness. That let us, and when we reconcile and forgive, you actually sit together as a team and forge a new relationship, and also you engineer a better future where you can have a relationship despite your past. Those processes take years, and they take a lot of emotions also to manage them, and it requires a genuine desire to actually see it happen. And it takes time. So I would say there are many people who are hurting across the country, and some of the causes of the suffering and all the pain that people have is about land, it's about conflict, it's about politics. But during campaigns, because our campaigns are usually crass and almost, there's a lot of propaganda. There are those who will use propaganda to get the votes. But that statement of propaganda revives negative emotions in other people. And sometimes people boil out into the open and attack their neighbors because of that.
Commissioner Sam Corner, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for having this conversation with us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. This is our birthday week again. We've been on air for 3 years at SpiceFM, and we thank you all. Have a lovely day. We'll be seeing you tomorrow. It's now 10 a.m.